I've been Lucas. Bye.
Bye. Oh, there's more!
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the people's channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the people's channel. Britain is watching.
A former This Morning star speaks out about life behind the lens as TV executives battle to save the beleaguered show.
Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on this bank holiday Monday, the 29th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ellie Costello and Martin Daubney.
And here's what's leading the news this morning. As we just said, Dr. Ranj Singh has hit out to what he calls the toxic culture at ITV as the controversy around its main anchor, Philip Schofield, continues.
Supermarkets warn the Prime Minister that limiting prices on basic food items won't bring down grocery bills. Rishi Sunak is currently in talks to cap costs on staple goods, but government sources stress any scheme will be voluntary.
And British police officers will be tasked with breaking up people smuggling gangs in North Africa amid warnings that 400,000 migrants could enter Europe through Italy this year.
And the Met Police will stop attending mental health calls in an attempt to free up resources. From September, officers will only attend incidents related to mental health if there's an immediate threat to life.
And of course, get in touch with us via Twitter or email, gbviews@gbnews.com, and let us know where you're watching or listening to today so we can give your town a shout out. So to our top story this morning, this morning star Dr. Ranj Singh has criticised the toxic culture on the show in a further blow to ITV.
Yes, Dr. Ranj Singh said he had no knowledge of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger member of staff, but claimed that issues with the show go far beyond the presenter's own behaviour.
And in response to the statement, an ITV spokesperson said the channel was fully committed to providing every opportunity for anyone who works with them to raise any concern or comments they may have.
So, after almost 35 years on air, can the show still go on? Well, we've been asking you what you think.
It'd be a shame if the show was axed because of the actions of one individual. I think that they probably need to rethink the structure and the culture of the work environment there, but ultimately I think the show should go on.
Did something that was pretty, questionable. And if it was him having an affair with a girl that age, it would have been a lot more of an uproar, I think.
We don't know both sides really, so I don't like to jump to conclusions, but if it's true, it is quite bad. But I don't know, I can see people are saying that Holly's a little bit uncomfortable in some situations, but I don't know, I guess we've got to see what happens.
Well, the storm rages on. What do you think?
Well, I worked on the show for about 6 years.
Oh, really?
As a contributor, as a regular debater, TV news reviewer, and I was very close, I think, to the team. It was a very family-based team, same as here. Everyone sort of really got on, and word really got around, and I bet they'll be all reeling. The team, the poor team, you have to feel for the team who worked so hard on the show. But everybody's talking about this. I was in Cromer at the weekend on the coast there. Everybody everywhere is talking about this story. It's just gripping.
And what were they saying? What were their opinions?
They were shocked about the Philip Schofield stuff, about the allegations. Very shocked. But the big story now, I guess, is can the show survive? Can Holly Willoughby survive?
Yes, can the show go on, indeed? Well, let's speak to PR expert and get his opinion, Andy Barr. Well, good morning to you, Andy. Really, really good to have you with us. As Martin just said, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? Can the show go on? OK, it looks as though we are struggling to hear Andy Barr there, so we'll just step away from that for a second, just whilst we can reconnect to his audio. But you're right, Martin. I think the people who I feel sorry for the most in this situation is the team at This Morning, who are known throughout the industry as working really, really hard, getting some of the best guests, getting some of the best scoops. Yeah. And a lot of them have been in the dark about all of this, and they're being drip-fed information. A lot of this they're just hearing about on the front pages, same as you and I. Yeah, that's a real shock. And Eamonn, Holmes, of course, had a lot to say on this, and having left the show. And he was saying that the top brass is where this needs to stop. The culture, if Dr. Ranj Singh's revelations today, if it's across the entire show, if people who speak out are getting squeezed out, then there's an issue, because that's no way to run any business. No. Let alone a TV one. Well, and especially, as you say, a family show. Yeah. This has got to be a place where, Holly and Phil were the golden couple of TV because they were just so warm, weren't they? And they had that friendship that looked like a genuine friendship, and people loved them for that. Yeah. So now, not only is that friendship fallen apart, but then if we hear that the show isn't this warm family show, and I think that's key. Continue? I think that's a key point, because the demographic, the audience, they're very family-loving, they have very good moral values, and so these types of allegations, I think, sit particularly uncomfortably with the sorts of people who watch that show. And the viewing figures have been taking a bit of a battering. It's on air today with Alison and Dermot at 10. So the show is rumbling on for now. But I think the big one is how long can this continue? And we're saying it's got a week. It's got this week to kind of get its act together. And if more allegations come out, Ali, it's going to be very damaging. Can it stumble on? Well, let's see if we can reconnect now with Andy Barr, the PR expert. Let's see if we can hear you now, Andy. Do you think that the show can survive this?
Well, in crisis comms terms, you have 2 weeks to try and survive. You know, and this really is a crisis for ITV. They've got sponsors looking like they're going to pull out. There's going to be more stories coming out, like the doctor's story yesterday. So it's looking really bad. It's looking like, you know, the show might need to have a rebrand.
And do you think maybe that's the best thing to do, Andy, in circumstances like this? I mean, I've worked on big brands before. Every brand has a shelf life to a certain point. And when you add the sort of scandal that we have, is it sometimes just best to rip it up and start again?
It is, but they need to be quite strategic in how they do it. They need to get all of the bad news out now. They need all the revelations out now before the brand actually dies. Get it all out the door now, deal with it, and then come back.
We've
now
lost him again.
Now looks like we've lost vision with Andy Barr there. We'll just see if we can reconnect with him.
He's got the gremlins. Talking about the show must go on. Andy's show isn't going on this morning. There we go. He's back again. He's in and out.
Andy, looks like we've just reconnected with you there.
Sorry about that.
It's, no, I think there's tech issues our side. Thank you so much for your patience. So, I mean, in terms of these stories coming out now, I mean, that is the danger now, isn't it? That we're going to have a news story in the papers every single day. What's your sense of this story? Do you think there is a lot more to come?
Oh, very much so. We're already seeing, you know, a load more tabloid allegations about, you know, what did Holly exactly know? When were things revealed? You know, when did the investigation take place? So this whole next 2 weeks are going to be really important. Tomorrow is going to be a key day. What will happen with the ITV share price?
And do you think part of the problem was they were already under the scrutiny, of course, after Q-gate? During the Queen's funeral, here were a couple, the golden couple, that seemed to think normal rules didn't apply to them. What's the cumulative effect of this? Because first there's that, and now there's this, and in the end, the public can just lose sympathy, don't they?
Well, I think that's the time that the public really lost a bit of faith, and also behind the scenes there's allegations that for the first time both parties were kind of briefing against each other to the media via their various spokespeople. So I think that was the catalyst, and I think that's when the ITV bosses have thought, actually, they might have lost the room here.
What do you think will happen with Holly Willoughby now? Because she has had a halo, really, in the eyes of the British public for the best part of 2 decades now. I mean, she could do no wrong pretty much until Q-gate. What will happen with her now, and how is she best to handle it? As if you were her advisor now in the PR world, what would you be telling her to do?
I think now's the time to take a step away, have a bit of a break. She'll be given another show by ITV. Although Schofield's proved that nobody's bulletproof, she is actually really loved. And I think she'll get a new show out of this. She'll go on to do really well. But I think that is probably away from this morning.
Right, OK, so you think Holly Willoughby's time at This Morning is done? You don't think that she can continue without Philip Schofield?
Well, I agree. I don't think she can carry on in its current format.
OK. Andy Barr, really, really good to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much for your patience with those tech issues there. Really fascinating insight.
Yeah, and I think he's right. I think every now and then, like I say, it's just time to kind of draw a line under something, move on. You know, the people are talented. The team behind the show can do another show. But rebadge it, move on, have a clear out. I think the public want that. That's my opinion. And also, having worked on the show for a number of years, these kind of allegations have been around for a while. And
worst kept secret in the media industry is what it's been described by some of the papers.
That's it. And I really do feel that more and more is going to come out. And it might just be time. Let's just call it a time and move on.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you think at home. You'll certainly have an opinion on that. Is this a rebrand? Should all of the presenters leave and should new ones come in? Let us know. What do you think the best thing to do with This Morning is? gbviews@gbnews.com. It's our new email address. Now, British police officers will be tasked with cracking down on people smuggling gangs in North Africa amid concerns that 400,000 people will attempt to enter Europe through Italy this summer.
Yeah, the warning comes ahead of a trip to the region by Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, where he will emphasise the importance of stopping people smuggling.
Well, joining us now is Conservative councillor Holly Whitbread. Good morning to you, Holly.
Morning.
So this is all about stopping migration, especially from Northern Africa, at its source, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think this is the one key thing to do is stop the people smugglers, and actually that is the cause of the illegal immigration and the boat crossing. So it's really good to see this proactive action today, and actually it's a mixture between that diplomatic response, also the practical response on the ground as well.
When you look at the numbers, Holly, I mean, they're truly eye-watering. 400,000 expected this year, and that's up from 167,000 last year, more than doubling in 1 year. Tunisia, Algeria, Italy, France are on the whistle-stop tour. Diplomatic building of bridges. The problem we've got, though, is that we've tried this sort of stuff before. For example, the European Union put 61.5 million into Libya to try and stop this in Africa. Is this actually going to work, or is it just the kind of thing that the voters back home want to hear? Is this window dressing to help Conservative voters feel like, yeah, this government's getting tough on this issue?
I think it's part of a wider response, actually, and we're seeing the impact of illegal immigration on the ground with the use of hotels across the country still, although there has been some move away from that, and that's seen huge pressure on infrastructure. So this is part of a wider response. We saw today as well the adverts that the government are using with Albania to try and discourage people from coming over. So I think ultimately the government have to have a mixture of responses, working with authorities abroad as well as more on a diplomatic side too.
So tell us a bit more about that advert, just in case our viewers and listeners haven't seen that. And do you think that kind of approach will work?
Well, I think it's one thing to look at. I mean, they're doing an advert on Facebook to try and discourage Albanian people from coming over illegally, which is one of the biggest groups which have been travelling across. It's one of many things to do. Ultimately, it's not going to solve the problem, but it's worth a try, I suppose.
Yeah, I think for every government advert against it, there'll be about another 50 from the people smugglers themselves offering family package deals. Now, Holly, am I correct in assuming that you have a couple of asylum hotels in your constituency?
Yeah.
How does that land locally? What are people's concerns, and what are they saying to you as a local councillor?
So we have 2 hotels locally, and there are huge concerns about the pressures on infrastructure, particularly around GP surgeries and school places as well in one of the cases. So there are huge concerns, and actually people just want to see a fair system. They want to see applications processed quicker, but on the ground, obviously, it doesn't go down too well. I think we're lucky we live in a respectful community, but it's more the concerns around pressure on infrastructure.
Holly, there's another big story out today, and it's the government discussing plans for supermarkets to impose a price cap on everyday items such as bread and milk. What do you make of that?
I think it's an idea to discuss. Ultimately, when you go into the supermarket now, it's a huge challenge for people with the cost of living crisis. Just even going to buy, you can see it, you go and buy one meal and it's double the price it was last year, essentially. So I think it's right the government are discussing options, although obviously you can't have these kind of arbitrary caps on private companies. I think that would be a challenge. Yeah. Although if an agreement can be reached with the supermarkets, it might be worth doing.
It's worth just mentioning the front page of the Express there. I don't know if you can see that. But supermarket chiefs have called this idea harebrained. They've said it won't work. It's a similar sort of thing. There you go. That's front page of the Express. It won't work, said supermarket chiefs. They called it harebrained. Similar thing is tried in France. And then also Ted Heath in the 1970s. Yeah. Ted Heath, that sort of anti-free market person. Is this the sort of thing that a Conservative government should be doing? It feels a little bit like socialism.
It doesn't sit naturally with a Conservative government or with Conservatives, but I would say that the pressure of the cost of living crisis is huge on people at the moment. Also, you've seen supermarkets, particularly during the pandemic, making massive profits. Yeah. So I suppose it's a policy which might resonate well with the public, although I'd rather see something a bit more competitive, looking at kind of cutting red tape in the background to bring prices down.
So interesting you say that, because the British Retail Consortium have said just that. They said we shouldn't be looking at price caps, we should be looking at cutting red tape. Yeah. And you agree?
Yes, I do. I do agree. I mean, particularly on kind of key items, maybe this is worth looking at, kind of milk and bread, but I would rather see red tape cut in the background. I think that would be much more effective.
Yeah, I don't know what you think back at home, but I certainly have a beef with supermarkets that have made millions and billions of pounds from rocketing fuel prices and made a stack of money during COVID lockdowns, and now they're saying we can't do anything about prices. We know they're squeezing farmers, particularly meat farmers, dairy farmers, so I think the big supermarkets should also cut us a bit of slack.
Well, let us know what you think at home. GBViews@gbnews.com. Holly Whitbread, thank you so much. You're going to be with us in the next hour as well, aren't you?
Superb. Thank you.
Fantastic. Now, the time is 16 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And Labour says the gender pay gap for women in their 50s won't close until 2050 at current rates. Shadow Women and Equality Secretary Annalise Dodds says her party will take action to close the gap once and for all.
President Erdogan has won the presidential election in Turkey to take his rule into a third decade. Erdogan received just over 52% of the vote, with his opponent securing nearly 48%. Rishi Sunak has sent his congratulations, saying he looks forward to continuing a strong collaboration between the UK and Turkey.
Another 52-48 election there. To sport now, and Everton have survived on the final day of the Premier League season thanks to a 1-0 win over Bournemouth. However, Leicester's relegation was confirmed despite a 2-1 win over West Ham as they join Leeds and Southampton in the Championship next season.
Do let us know what you think about a price cap on those everyday items such as bread and milk. I'm really fascinated to know what you think at home, because food inflation has really hit us all, hasn't it? It's probably the number one thing, is, along with energy bills, that we are all noticing in our everyday lives in terms of cost of living.
Yeah.
It's our baskets, isn't it, in the supermarkets? They are costing a fortune.
Absolutely, and I think people want lower prices, but I do worry when we have state intervention, because ostensibly this isn't compulsory, it's opt-in. It feels a bit, I think, pathetic. I mean, can they really make a difference? And how about just being more conscientious sellers, suppliers? Come on, Tesco, come on, Asda, cut some slack.
Well, Sainsbury's have said that this isn't their fault. They're not guilty of greedflation. That's what their CEO has been saying. Let us know what you think at home. GBNews@GBNews.com. Now, it's estimated that 1 in every 100 people in the UK has autism, and now a Hampshire-based charity has become the first to provide assistant dogs to autistic people of any age across the country.
It's a lovely story, this, and our South East of England reporter Ray Edison has been meeting 17-year-old Rebecca and her dog Lola to find out more.
Being autistic can be very isolating. The world's not really designed for people like me. It's designed for people who are neurotypical, and there's not a single thing I do every day that isn't impacted by being autistic. So just having her there sometimes it makes a world of difference, because I'm just not alone.
Rebecca is 17 and autistic. Without her assistance dog Lola, the world would be a very isolating place.
Good girl. A lot of people don't realise how difficult accessing the community can become, because everything's loud, everything's bright, everything's busy, and Lola really helps me with that.
Can I make you go the other way around, so make it a little bit more difficult?
Lola was trained by Dogs for Autism, a new charity founded due to the extreme shortage in assistance dogs. Jan Kiley is COO.
Dogs for Autism was actually the brainchild of Hilary Armour, who's our CEO. She's got an autistic son, Marcus. She wanted to get a dog for him and couldn't get one from any of the charities that were around at the time. So she trained her own dog for Marcus, and everywhere she went, people were stopping her saying, "Where did you get a dog? My child needs a dog."
Originally based in Hilary's kitchen, Dogs for Autism has just moved into its first dedicated training centre in Alton, Hampshire. Here they teach volunteers how to be puppy parents, raising the dogs for up to 2 years until they have a range of specialist skills.
So that can be deep pressure therapy, where the dog will lie on the autistic person in a particular way, and that just helps calm the proprioceptive system. They can be in the middle of a supermarket and things get too much, they'll find a quiet corner and their dog can do it. So the dog's got to do it in any situation.
She can let Mum know when I'm overwhelmed, often before even I know that I'm overwhelmed, and it gives her peace of mind that she can take a step back or wait outside the store while I go in, and that it will be fine.
The new centre is a game changer for the charity, but with such high demand, they need more people to volunteer to raise life-changing assistance dogs like Lola.
It's really rewarding, but obviously it's time-consuming, and we need people who are at home most of the time. But if anyone is in sort of within an hour really of Alton in Hampshire and would like to volunteer to be a puppy parent, we would absolutely love to hear from them.
Ray Addison, GB News.
Oh, what a wonderful story.
Lovely, yeah.
It is really, really great. And as you just heard there, they are looking for people who'd like to volunteer for that programme. So if you're in Hampshire or around, do get in touch because it's a really worthwhile programme.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Beautiful story.
Another thing we'll talk about a lot today is the weather. It's been a magnificent weekend. It looks like we've got a scorchio week coming up ahead, Ellie. But record temperatures yesterday, 24.4 degrees in Plymouth. There's a beautiful picture there of a wonderful packed British beach. I know that one. I go past that on the train on the way down to Cornwall. It's awesome down there.
Wonderful. Are you heading down for the week?
Well, I went to Cromer for the week. I had a whistle-stop tour. The missus and the kids are still there with my cousin and my auntie and uncle. Cromer was packed. It was wonderful. All the pubs in a roaring trade. It was just really, really great to be beside the seaside.
There is nothing better than Britain in the sunshine. It's honestly, our beaches just look absolutely wonderful, don't they? People flock to them. There'll be lots of that happening today. It's going to be another hot day today. What do you say, 20 degrees?
Yeah, it's going to be 20 in Plymouth, but it's going to be sort of picking up and maintaining clear, sunny skies all week on the south coast at least. Looks wonderful.
Yeah, perfect for half-term as well. Do let us know what you're up to in the sunshine. Have you been out in the garden enjoying it? Have you been having a barbecue? Are you heading to the coast? Do let us know because it looks as though that weather is set to stay. And also, if you're heading back today from your bank holiday break, let us know how you're feeling about that because the roads could be busy. We're going to be talking about that later with Simon Calder, and in about an hour's time we're talking to the Met Office who are going to run us through what the half-term weather is going to be looking like. And as Martin said, it's a scorcher, isn't it?
Yeah, fingers crossed. It's going to be great.
Stay with us, though, as new data reveals 30,000 muggings went unsolved last year. We'll be asking if Britain is becoming lawless. That's next. This is Breakfast on GB News.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, welcome back. The time is 6:25. Still lots to come on today's programme.
At 6:45, we'll travel to the island that inspired Agatha Christie's infamous novel, And Then There Were None. It's now up for auction. Could be yours for a cool 15 million quid.
Sounds good, doesn't it? And as the hit TV show Succession comes to a conclusion, at 7:20 we'll debate if it's ever a good idea to work with your family. And remember, you can get in touch in all the usual ways. You can email gbviews@gbnews.com or you can tweet us at gbnews. And lots of you doing just that this morning. Of course, we're still talking about the Schofield saga. And this morning, can it still go ahead in its current format? Well, Adrian says the show needs to be relaunched with new celebrities. You see Holly and you think of Philip.
It's a fair point, that. It really is a fair point. Eileen says it needs new presenters and a new format to make it work, so a complete overhaul required, according to Eileen.
Sandy says the show should be revamped altogether. Both presenters became complacent over the years, turning up on the show still drunk from the night before. See, I remember that, and I thought that was quite funny.
I did, actually. I thought
that worked.
Yeah,
actually.
I did. It was made them quite relatable, normal. We've won an award, we've been on a Beano, so I thought that was all right.
Yeah, I quite like that. But, yeah, I'm sure lots of people didn't feel the same way. But I thought that was them at their peak, actually.
Yeah. Sylvie also echoing what other people have said here. It's time the show was laid to rest. What goes around comes around. Sense of karma there from Sylvie.
And Graham agrees. I think that this morning needs to be rested and relaunched. Holly is damaged by her close relationship with Schofield, and also people are not believing her denials. She says she knew nothing about this young man that Philip Schofield had an affair with.
Interesting. There's nobody out there yet so far that are defending the show, all the people. If you're out there, please get in touch. We'd like to hear your views.
Yeah, as we said, it's the staff that we feel sorry for, the members that are working there on the show, and they're still working really, really hard. Even today, it's going to be on air with Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary. Going to be very interesting to see how that looks this morning.
That's right. OK, to our next story now. And the Metropolitan Police has announced it will stop attending mental health calls unless there is an immediate threat to life.
The Commissioner of Britain's largest police force says the move is an attempt to free up resources, with officers often being diverted from fighting crime.
It comes as new data from the Liberal Democrats reveals that 30,000 muggings went unsolved last year, with the party accusing the police of letting criminals off the hook.
Well, former Detective Chief Inspector Mike Neville joins us now. Good morning to you, Mike. Very, very good to have your company. So what do you make of this, then? The Metropolitan Police are going to stop attending mental health calls.
Well, I think it's a very brave call by the Commissioner, Mark Rowley, because so many police resources are tied up with mental health situations, and they should only really be there when it's desperate. This is a matter for the National Health Service, and the police are just covering up the problem. And while they're covering up the problem, they're not dealing with crime. So this is a good call by Sir Mark, and I wish him well on this one.
Yeah, it's a brave call. When you've got the numbers, Mike, 27,000 mental health call-outs by the Metropolitan Police last year alone, and it's that number every year. Do you think there's a sense that the police have become like an extended social services, an extension of the NHS? And feeding into our other story, that kind of prohibits them from being effective bobbies on the ground to step in and solve street-level crimes, such as muggings, and that's where people want coppers, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the police office, the young police officers I speak to, they're constantly dealing with mental health issues. I did a Freedom of Information Act request and found out that 70% of the Met hadn't arrested one person in a year. Now, some of that will be laziness, and some of it will be lack of focus on crime, but it also will be that they're called away to deal with things that they shouldn't be dealing with. But when it comes to the muggings, the Liberal Democrats have some cheek, really, because they'll tell the police that they should be dealing with more muggings, but one of the ways to deal with muggings is stop and search, and that is something that they don't like, because the elephant in the room with muggings is the amount of muggings committed by young black men. They are 10 times more likely to be arrested than a white lad for muggings, and these are government stats. And the way to deal with this problem is not to ignore it. And we have Baroness Casey saying that the police are racist because they do too many stop and searches. You can't have both things. Either the police can deal with muggings, or the police should stop doing stop and searches. They can't have both ends of the stick.
So why are we seeing so many muggings going unsolved, Mike? Are police officers too afraid to do stop and searches?
One reason is officers are afraid to do stop and searches. And the other thing as well with muggings, they're quite difficult to solve unless you catch the person then and there. The only way to, so somebody gets mugged, there's no fingerprints or DNA at the scene. The only way to catch them really is either CCTV or some other images. And the police do not have systems to deal with them. I've worked out that of the 1,000 crimes that could be potentially captured on CCTV, only one or two is detected. The Home Office do not measure the use of CCTV or images like they measure the use of fingerprints and DNA. So in the police, what gets measured gets done. And the trouble with this is, of course, is that violent criminals get away with it. And what's really sad is that one of the worst performing forces, West Midlands, I actually contacted that I'm offered my eldest, but they're always too clever and they're too committed to diversity policies and whatever other woke nonsense comes up rather than catching villainy. And that's a real tragedy with the police.
I wonder, Mike, if that's part of the issue. It's not just about policing numbers, but what about the types of copper we have on the beat now? I mean, back in your day, no doubt, there are a lot of people who've been in the armed forces who had that kind of street knowledge. Is a part of this not just the lack of numbers on the street, but a lack of will to get stuck in from graduate coppers?
It's a lack of will and a lack of experience because we've got all these new officers who are quite new. And as you say, when I passed out of Hendon, 50% of us had medals on our chest because we've been in the armed forces. And it does take some bottle, really. It does take some gall, confidence to stand up to somebody in the street and say, right, I don't know who you are, what you're doing here. I know you've got a conviction for mugging, so I'm going to turn out your pockets and look for a knife. That really takes some presence and confidence. And a lot of young officers just simply don't do that, have that. And also, when you constantly recruit from one pool, the students, they almost empathise with these things. They think stop and search is racist. We've had 2 to 3 decades of recruiting the wrong people into the police, and those people are now managing the whole system, and it's not working. One in 20 burglaries is solved. All these muggings unsolved. 1 in 100 thefts solved. Does no one feel shame? I would like to help the police. I offer my assistance. I can offer it now, but it isn't good enough, and the public deserve better.
Mike, so interesting that you just recall off those numbers. How much of this is to do with trust in the police and trust in the police to take action? I mean, are people just not reporting these muggings because they know that nothing will come of it?
Well, these muggings are obviously reported because we've got the stats, but where people report things is if there is a benefit, like insurance. So you report your house being burgled because you get your money. If your phone gets stolen in a mugging, you report it. If cash out your wallet gets stolen, you do not report it. And the police have become some sort of crime number allocation service rather than a crime fighting service. And we need to grip this. But it's the Home Office, and, we've had a Conservative government for over 13 years, and this silly nonsense goes on. And what sums it up to me is this. I spoke to a chief superintendent from a provincial force, and he said he'd said to his assistant chief constable, I'm really worried about all these hot burglaries where people are being broken into when they're in the beds. I'm losing sleep about it. What do you lose sleep about, ma'am? And she said, the lack of female BAME officers. And that small story sums up the tragedy of British policing today.
Well, Mike Neville, I think you're mainlining common sense today. I think that'd be music to our listeners' and viewers' ears. That one stat you repeat, I just want to repeat it, staggering. 70% of officers haven't arrested anybody in a year, and you personally used to arrest 4 people every day. That's just astonishing. Wow. Mike Neville, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mike.
I know there was 4 every day, but
he's still going. That's the sort of person we need back in the force. We need him making choices, Ali, because that's what we want. Common sense, boots on the ground, get stuck in policing.
Well, you will definitely have an opinion of that at home. Let us know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.com.
And still to come, the big supermarket chains have hit back at the government in a tug-of-war over prices. We'll discuss that and all of today's newspaper headlines with the legendary Chris Akabusi and Anna Mikalova, and that's coming right next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
And welcome back to Breakfast. It's 6:38 and let's have a look at today's front pages now.
And The Times says police from the National Crime Agency will help identify and break up people smuggling gangs in North Africa.
And meanwhile, The Express reports on supermarket warnings to Rishi Sunak that price caps will not reduce food bills.
The Guardian reveals the Met Police will no longer respond to mental health call-outs unless there's a threat to life.
And the Mail continues its Schofield coverage as its former medic, Dr. Ranj, hits out at the toxic This Morning culture.
Well, joining us now to go through the papers in more detail this morning is Olympian Chris Akabusi and Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mihalova. Really good to see you both this morning. And Chris, let's start with you, shall we? In the Daily Mail, the front page, and it's the crisis engulfing This Morning. It continues to deepen, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. This time it's Dr. Raj Singh, who was a regular contributor to this Good Morning for 10 years. And he wants to reply to the fact of that although he knew no specifics about Mr. Schofield, he is very aware that the environment and the culture of this Good Morning was toxic, meaning there was bullying and discrimination, according to him and his lens. And he was saying that because he was involved in diversity, inclusion and well-being, he brought it to the attention of the hierarchy, and the hierarchy had come back and said, well, actually, we investigated and we found your issues baseless. But it's clear that there's a lot going to come out with Mr. Schofield and his involvement with his young employee, or not employee, colleague, younger colleague. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. And as I said earlier on, we ain't seen nothing yet. Mr. Schofield, who's dedicated 2 decades to Good Morning. This morning, sorry. Doesn't leave his post because he's had an affair. Not that it's right or wrong, but affairs happen all the time. So I'm sure there's a lot going to come out over this next week that's going to sort of pale into significance of what we know already.
And what is so interesting about what Ranj is saying is he was pushed out after he spoke to bosses about that concerning culture at This Morning.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the really key takeaway from his statement is that nothing happens in a vacuum. You know, no as in any organisation, whenever there's been any kind of bullying or harassment or anything at all, there are people who enable it, always. And I think what this story today just shows that there are serious questions to be asked for all of the bosses, especially the bosses, really, of the show.
Do you think it can survive, both of you?
I don't think it will, and it doesn't have to, does it? I mean, there will be a morning programme on ITV quite clearly. And so basically it's a rebranding exercise. Whether you've got some of the people in the middle, you know, who make the machinations work, still involved. But yeah, of course, there will be a show in the morning, but Good Morning...
This morning.
This morning. As you can see, I don't watch TV. But this morning, no, that's going to be over.
OK, so you think it's going to be a rebrand?
I think it'll survive. I mean, I don't see why, you know, just because these two presenters... Like, you know, no offence to people on the telly, but, like, I think sometimes egos can slightly get ahead of themselves. But I'll defer to someone much wiser than me. Eamonn Holmes, I think, when asked about it, says, of course it'll survive them. You know, who are they? They'll just get new people in.
Well, it depends what you mean. It will survive them, because... If, as Dr. Singh is saying, is that it's a toxic environment and that the buck stops at the top, then if the top get released, then you bring in a new programme.
Well, yeah.
And you just call
the personnel will have to, sounds like will probably have to change. But yeah, as you say, there will be a morning show.
Of course there will.
OK, let's move on to our next story now. Anna, coming to you. Front page of The Express, and they're very dismissive about Rishi Sunak's Ted Heath 1970s-style demand the supermarkets cut the price of basics.
Yeah, so the retailers are saying it's not this supermarket price cap suggestion, which the government keeps saying is only voluntary, won't work because it won't bring down total bills, because the supermarket bosses are saying, you know, if you have to, voluntarily or not, artificially lower the cost of essentials like milk or eggs, then they'll have to put up prices other places. The Telegraph is similarly running a story saying that it could even cause food shortages. Personally, I sort of read this and I think this is a very bad way of introducing policy. It looks like something someone's sort of written on the back of a napkin and hasn't really thought through. And, you know, you can't, you know, saying there's going to be a cap, but saying it's going to be voluntary is nonsense. So you either do a government-imposed cap, you either go for it and go full 70s, or you don't do it at all. Yeah. But what's wrong with saying, I mean, the price of eggs, for example, one example, has just gone through the roof. Yeah. It's appalling. And these are household essentials. What is wrong with doing something to protect those things? Because this argument that it'll push up prices elsewhere, fine, put up the price of unessential goods, chocolate, whatever, but things like eggs, milk, what's wrong with it?
Isn't there an argument, though, Chris, that this is the supermarket's fault? I mean, they're the ones who we hear all the time about chicken farms having to close down because they cannot afford... You know, by the time the supermarkets have squeezed their margins, there's no profit left. Same with dairy, same with beef. So the supermarkets, you know, for them to say, oh, no, we can't cut prices. Well, come on, lads, you're making billions of pounds of profit.
So, look, so the supermarkets made a lot of money through this pandemic. I remember the first time when we went into lockdown, they had what's called their peak at Christmas. Then they had a double peak in the Easter. They've made lots of money. Yeah. But nonetheless, supermarkets make the money on economy of scale, on very, very thin margins. Yes, they make massive profits, but that's because, as you've said, they squeeze the supplier. Yeah. And they don't mind if 10 suppliers go out of business if they've got 2 suppliers who can supply at their level of cost. So, yeah, I mean, a supermarket can be a bit of a pernicious environment anyway, because they go through so many sectors and destroy, you know, supply chains. That said, you know, I go to farm shops. They're 2 or 3 times more expensive than supermarkets. So, you know, they are providing a need to a certain section of the community. It's a difficult one, but in the end, supermarkets exist because they supply and demand. If people didn't go to them and buy the goods there, they wouldn't exist. So I suspect it's very, very difficult. If you say to a supermarket that we're going to cauterise your ability to earn there. They'll say, OK, we'll reinvest our wheat into something else and we'll sell our high-branded, you name it, cake, you know, or we'll make fancy yoghurts out of our milk and we just won't sell it to the common man or woman, if that's not too wrong to say.
Do you welcome a price cap?
Not particularly, no, because, you know, we live in a... common market, we just got...
But we don't. That's such a myth. There's no real common market. I mean, look at what happened during COVID.
Yeah.
We were restricted. You could only buy 2 packets of paracetamol. Do you remember that?
Yes,
you could only buy 1 loo roll. That's not the market.
No.
So we already don't have an imperfect market.
But that, if you go back to that, though, that was because we started hoarding. What happened? I had a big car, and so I would load my car I'd load my car full of loo rolls, which meant everyone down the other street...
That's you, Chris.
Well, it's just an analogy. Do you understand what I was going to say?
Yeah.
So, no, that's why that didn't work.
But that's why you protect people.
Because there's a very thin veneer of civilization, and when it breaks down, might makes right. You saw people fighting in car parks.
Yeah. But I think this is a similarly exceptional situation where bills have gone up so much and ordinary families are being so squeezed that there is an argument for support. But it's just been done terribly by, you know, it's like they're half doing it.
The idea that the state steps in and subsidises butter and milk and eggs, I think is for the birds. It's socialism.
Yes, exactly. It's not capitalism. It's not a capitalist market economy, is it? You know, the free hand of the market, and you will find its ways because you will find that there are shops where you can go to. Lidl and Primark and all these sort of... They work for their own particular segment of the market and demographic, and they find ways of getting it to the market cheaper.
Yeah. OK, Chris, let's move on, shall we? And this is a story in the Times. It's front page, actually. Police from the National Crime Agency are going to help countries in North Africa to break up people smuggling gangs.
Yeah, I mean, so this sounds very good on paper. Will it work in practice? That is the question. So Robert Jenowich, I think his name is, you know, he's going to ensure that we get to the source of the issue, which is the gangs. And the line that he used, which I liked, was we're going to disrupt, degrade and deny the gangs. Now, I'll be interested to see how they do that, but clearly, if you stop the issue at source, then you don't have to worry about the awful view of people jumping on boats and risking their lives and having a challenge of getting into a country that is not open for them right now. Now, we are talking about illegal immigration because clearly we do have a system for proper migration. If you're a refugee or you really are flighting from something awful, but it's the illegal immigration we're talking about.
Yeah, I just want to bring you in here, Anna, because this is not a new idea. The European Union has spent £61.5 million on trying to stop this precise problem since 2019, and yet we had 145,000 crossing the Med last year, about to double, more than double, to 400,000. So it sounds great on paper, let's cut this off at source, but is this yet more kind of whistle-stop tour, window-dressing politics, and can it actually be effective?
I mean, I think, as you both said, the focus is correct. Criminal gangs who are actually bringing in the migrants and often lying to the people that they're bringing over, absolutely do need to be tackled. But no, I'm extremely sceptical, not least because the people they've identified to tackle these overseas gangs are the National Crime Agency, and the NCA cannot even tackle gangs at home. So how exactly are they going to go to countries where they have zero on-the-ground intelligence properly, no foothold, and suddenly break up their gangs?
And another problem, of course, is the country where most originate from is Libya. Now, Libya is the 171st most corrupt country on the planet.
Right.
I mean, it really
we've had a slight hand in that, perhaps.
So there is how you do it. Because if it's corrupt, you play by the local rules. If you give the right people, I'm talking about the landlords and the gang lords, the right money, they're not going to be involved in that. Look, I'm just talking about, you said, how do you do it? You play by the rules on the ground, and the rules on the ground are very different to our high-minded rules in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, OK, one final quick story. We've had Turkish elections and that familiar margin of victory, 52 to 48.
I know.
Of Brexit, but we have continuity of power in Turkey.
52-48. There's some kind of magical sorcery going on, isn't there? So we got President Erdogan's come in again. This is his third term. He's going to be his third decade in power. Yet another hugely powerful world leader who's in for over 20 years. I mean, it's never really a good sign, is it?
It's interesting, though, how he's basically a dictator, yet he only won by a slim margin. It makes you wonder.
Well, yeah, but that shows you that actually there's a groundswell of people who really do want change. Unfortunately, they don't have their hands on the mechanisms and the levers of control. Erdogan does. It's not a good look, but I do understand that the rest of the world are happy because they've got continuity. They know what they're dealing with.
And also with him and with Turkey, Turkey is massively instrumental about this flow of migrants from Africa. It's a powerful country.
It's on the cusp of Asia and Europe, and it's always been a very important, vital cog in our wheel.
OK, Chris, Anna, that's time, but you're back in the next hour, aren't you? Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. OK, it was the inspiration and setting for two of Agatha Christie's most iconic works, and it's played host to all manner of celebrities from Noel Coward to the Beatles.
Well, now Burgh Island Hotel, complete with 21-acre island off the coast of Devon, is on the market. It could be yours for a cool £15 million.
I've been past there. It's a beautiful place, and our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody took a day trip out to the island to find out more.
The sea tractor that takes you to Burgh Island only lasts a few minutes, but it takes you back in time. On the island, the 1930s are in full swing.
It is just an amazing place, and of course it has one of the largest collections of Art Deco antiques and artefacts in the country. So as it is now, Noel Coward, Agatha Christie et al. Would have walked on those same floorboards. They would have been touching a lot of the same bits of architectural interest. So it has that feeling of history, deeply seated within it.
So says Giles Fuchs, the current owner. Over the years, guests have included Winston Churchill and President Eisenhower. Head of guest relations Vlad Krupa told me the parties on the island are legendary.
There are many parties. Some of them I can't really disclose. Because it's saying what happens on the island stays on the island. So if you want to have an exclusive party, so pretty much when you hire the whole hotel, it is not just the hotel. You need to think that when tide comes in, you have actually hired the whole entire island for yourselves.
Guests come here from around the world to experience the hospitality and the food.
It's pressure that we can't handle. It's cooking great food, keeping it seasonal, keeping it simple. To us, keeping it simple and just trying to put a show on, just like out front.
A show that drew the attention of the world's most prolific author, West Country writer Agatha Christie. But it wasn't so much the glamour that appealed to her imagination. It was the setting itself. In arguably her greatest novel of all time, certainly the one that she said she was most proud of, and then there were none. 10 strangers receive a summons to come to a mysterious house on an island off the coast of Devon. When they get here, the storm creeps in. They find themselves trapped. And every night, one of them ends up dead, until there's just one left.
And it's not difficult to understand why she chose this as a location, because it's in the winter when the sea is up and the wind is blowing. It does feel menacing. It's a very different feeling in the winter with the storms coming off the Atlantic.
Giles is philosophical about selling. It's time for new input, a fresh pair of eyes.
I think I'll be fine with it. I'll say goodbye and I'll return, and I've done my bit. I'm leaving it better than when I found it.
The hope now is the new owner will continue Giles's work, and Burgh Island will remain one of the most magical and mysterious hotels in the world. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Well, Ali, Jeff was really getting into character there, wasn't he? He came over all Macbeth. And I tell you what, I think, in the grand scheme of things, 15 million quid for that An island, 21 acres, with that heritage. Seems like a bargain.
And a massive hotel as well.
Amazing.
Know what you think? If I had 15 million, maybe. I'd definitely like to visit. It looks really good, doesn't it?
Yeah, amazing.
It's beautiful.
OK, well, stay with us. We'll have the latest on the future of This Morning as one of the show's former stars speaks out against the show.
But first, Jonathan Vaughtry has your bank holiday forecast.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your bank holiday forecast for GB News by the Met Office. It's not often that we get to say there's a bank holiday where we'll have a lot of fine weather, but make the most of it because high pressure is sticking with us throughout the day, keeping things dry for many of us, and there'll be a lot of warm sunshine to be had. There is, though, a bit of a squeeze in the ice bars across the very far south, so it is going to be breezier across coastal areas of England, so feeling cooler as that drags in some air from the North Sea. But elsewhere, there'll be a lot of sunshine to be had and really quite glorious if you are stepping outside. Temperatures in the western areas climbing to highs of around 20 degrees Celsius. Even parts of the central belt should climb towards those high figures. But as we said, eastern areas of England probably feeling that bit cooler where you are exposed to the breeze. Cloudy across the far north of Scotland, and it will bring the odd spots of drizzle throughout the day and overnight as well. And actually that cloud is going to slowly circulate its way down in that breeze and start pushing into eastern coastal areas of England as we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, potentially turning quite murky here. But elsewhere we'll hold on to clear spells overnight, the odd mist patch possible underneath those clear skies as well. Temperatures falling off into low single figures for towns and cities, but a patchy frost is possible in some rural areas. Where you've had the clear spells overnight, though, it does mean you'll start off once again on Tuesday with a lot of sunshine, and you'll probably hold on to it for much of the day as well. It's going to be those eastern coastal areas, though, that actually hold on to the cloud, and it could be quite stubborn to clear its way off throughout the day. So feeling, again, quite cool underneath that cloud, but where you do have the sunshine, temperatures climbing into the low 20s and should be another pleasant day if you are still heading outside. High pressure is staying with us throughout the week, so we'll get a fairly repeat situation where eastern areas will stay often rather cloudy and cool, but temperatures higher over in the west. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
This is Boston, or at least a part of it anyway.
What we voted for has backfired.
You don't see many locals about anymore.
Do you feel as though you've got what you asked for?
No, not at all.
From my point of view, yes. From a business point of view.
This was to campaign just to get a referendum.
Just to get a referendum. We need people like Nigel to grab it. Come on, lead the country.
They tell us at elections what they want us to hear, but they never actually really mean it.
We're proud to be GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
A former This Morning star speaks out about life behind the lens as TV executives battle to save the show.
And good morning. It's 7 o'clock on this bank holiday Monday, the 29th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ellie Costello and myself, Martin Daubney.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. And Dr. Ranj Singh has hit out at what he calls the toxic culture at This Morning as the controversy around its main anchor, Philip Schofield, continues.
And supermarkets warned the Prime Minister that limiting prices on basic food items won't bring down grocery bills. Rishi Sunak is currently in talks to cap costs on staple goods, but government sources stress any scheme will be strictly voluntary.
British police officers will be tasked with breaking up people smuggling gangs in North Africa amid warnings that 400,000 migrants could enter Europe through Italy this summer.
And the Met Police will stop attending mental health calls in an attempt to free up resources. From September, officers will only attend incidents related to mental health if there is an immediate threat to life.
And do get in touch with us via Twitter, GB News, or email gbnews@gbnews.com. Lots of you have been doing so this morning. Thank you so much for keeping us company this morning. Lots of you getting in touch on that food price cap that the government is mooting as an idea at the moment. Do you think that the basics such as bread and milk should be capped? Well, Andrew says, I believe this is a fantastic idea. As a single father with 5 children, any help would be welcomed.
Yeah, Martin here says, I live in the countryside surrounded by farms and all price caps will do is put those farms out of business, as many are already struggling with supermarkets screwing them to the floor on the lowest prices possible as it is. Producing milk offers almost no profit at all for farmers already, just further squeezing those margins, Ellie.
I really do feel for British farmers. They have it really, really tough. Thanks, Martin, for that. Brian says, I remember Harold Wilson's price cap on bread and milk in the 70s. It does feel very 70s,
yeah, I think,
even this suggestion.
Yeah, it was it was Ted Heath, I think, in the 70s. It's been tried before in France, been tried in America by Nixon, and it hasn't really ever worked. I think it sounds good, and of course people want cheap stuff.
Of course, yeah.
I don't think it quite delivers. Doesn't bring home the bacon, to use a supermarket pun.
Rob says, if I were a big supermarket, I would be looking at trying to sell milk at cost with a decent price to the farmers, processing and bottling costs and some overheads for staff to get it onto the shelves.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to see a better deal for British farmers, and some nice homely advice here from Peter in Dornoch, who says, please make sure you throw less food away. Make sure your kids eat the crusts. That's one that I always talk about. If you're watching Dolly and Sonny, eat your crust this morning. And farmers make very little from producing milk. You can't even lower the price of milk. It's a fair point. The margins are already squeezed so tight.
And farmers aren't making any money, are they? Well, do keep your views coming in on any of the stories that we're talking about this morning. gbnews@gbnews.com. Story now, and former This Morning star Dr. Ranj Singh has criticised the toxic culture on the show in a further blow to ITV.
Yeah, Dr. Ranj Singh said he had no knowledge of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger member of staff, but claimed that issues with the show go far beyond the presenter's own behaviour.
Well, in response to the statement, an ITV spokesperson said the channel was fully committed to providing every opportunity for anyone who works with them to raise any concern or comments that they may have.
So, after almost 35 years on air, can the show still go on? We've been asking you what you think.
be a shame if the show was axed because of the actions of one individual. I think that they probably need to rethink the structure and the culture of the work environment there, but ultimately I think the show should go on.
Did something that was pretty, questionable. And if it was him having an affair with a girl that age, it would have been a lot more of an uproar, I think.
We don't know both sides really, so I don't like to jump to conclusions, but if it's true, it is quite bad. But I don't know, I can see people are saying that Holly's a little bit uncomfortable in some situations, but I don't know, I guess we've got to see what happens.
Well, let's speak now to PR expert Andy Barr. Good morning to you, Andy. So we've had the affair saga from Schofield, and now we've got Dr. Raj Singh speaking out about bullying and discrimination this morning. It's very, very damaging to the brand, isn't it?
Good morning. It's really worrying for ITV. I think they're going to be in crisis comms mode all of this morning, trying to get some positive news out there and trying to understand just how badly this is going to affect their share price on Tuesday.
And in terms of the next wave of affairs coming out, the big question is, can the show survive? And what did Holly know? Because people are saying, well, a lot of people on the show have been talking about these rumours for a long time. She claims that she didn't know about them, and when she put them to Philip, he denied anything untoward was happening. But you do get the sense, don't you, that there could be more and more coming out as the days roll on.
Very much so. I think the next 14 days in any crisis comms situation is absolutely vital. And, the tabloids are already starting to put out stories this morning saying that she's been at social events with the pair of them as well. And I think, as everyone says, it's a family tight-knit show. So it would be very surprising, for her not to know, really. So I think it's going to be really interesting. They need to get all the bad news out now. Decide what the plan is. Is the show too toxic to carry on? Does it need to rebrand? Are sponsors going to pull out, and decide how they can try and fix it? And they've really got a day before it starts hitting shareholders.
Speed to ITV and This Morning. What do they need to be putting out there? What does their focus need to be in the next 24, 48 hours?
They need to reassure sponsors, they need to reassure advertisers that the brand isn't dead, because they're going to pull their spend whilst they wait for the new TV show or the new brand to come out. So the next few days, and certainly today, is going to be key to see what ITV says to try and, will they try and save This Morning, or will they just let all the bad news out and then rebrand it into a new show, bring through Alison Hammond, who everyone said is going to be the next big thing for ITV?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. We're getting a lot of comments through from viewers this morning. Linda in Barry in Wales makes a precise point. She said, I don't see why the likes of Alison Hammond and Martin Lewis, etc., that make the programme should lose their slots. They haven't done anything wrong. Now, that makes sense on one point, but is it an easier thing to do just to rebrand the show with those familiar faces, but to change the kind of wrapping paper, as it were? Is that, from a brand perspective, a more sensible route forward?
Oh, 100%. Martin Lewis is needed by the nation at the minute, isn't he, to help us all save money. And Alison Hammond has been a huge success story for ITV. They almost coming through would be a rebrand in its own right. I think This Morning, as a show, as a concept, needs to change. The public want it to change. And I think that's what's coming through straight away from the whole Schofield affair.
And what next for Holly Willoughby? Because she's been the nation's sweetheart, hasn't she, for the best part of 2 decades. What does this mean for her?
Well, I think she's still got a lot of public goodwill in the bank. Obviously, Qgate was a huge scandal for both of them, and maybe the catalyst for it all. But for her, I think she'll be quietly sort of spirited away from the whole morning format. I think she will be given a new show on ITV somewhere. But at the minute, I think she'll probably take an extended break and weigh up all of her options.
OK, Andy Barr, thanks for your input this morning. Fascinating stuff. It's going to be one to watch. The show goes on today, at least, Ellie, 10 o'clock. With Dermot and Alison. What the viewing figures be like? Yeah. Will the associated sort of reputation of the show just be a turn-off? Or what is it actually a very wholesome, family-orientated audience.
And that's what's going to be so difficult, Martin, because, as you say, it's a family show. It's all this light-hearted warmth about it. And now we're having front page of the newspapers this morning with one of the main guests on the programme calling it toxic, talking about bullying and discrimination at the heart of this morning. I mean, can the brand survive? It is a British institution. It's been on air for 35 years.
Yeah, and I was on the show for 6 years as a regular contributor, regular panellist. I know Dr. Ranj very well, and it's not the sort of thing he would not want to damage the show, is what I'm saying. You know, he's a respectable guy. He's been asked a lot. He was saying on his Instagram feed he's been offered a lot of money to tell his story. He doesn't want to go down that route. So he's saying, I think, it's not just about the two stars. It's about the associated atmosphere at the show. Having said that, as we keep saying, there are a lot of great people who work on these programmes and it's not their fault. So it's a shame that everyone gets dragged into this, Ali.
Yeah, no, it is a shame for those really hard-working members of the team who are hearing about this, just the same as you and I, on the front pages of the newspapers. It must be really, really tough for them. And for people like Dr. Ranj, who said he wanted to speak out about it because he stands for health and well-being. He's a doctor, he does health segments, he felt he had to say something, he felt like a whistleblower, and then he felt like he was pushed out of the programme. Let us know what you think at home. gbviews@gbnews.com. Does the show need rebranding? Does it need doing away with? Should Holly come back? Should somebody else come in? Does it need to have fresh meat? Let us know what you think at home.
Yeah, good stuff. OK, moving on to our next story now. British police officers will be tasked with cracking down on people smuggling gangs in North Africa amid concerns that 400,000 people will attempt to enter Europe through Italy this summer.
Well, the warning comes ahead of a trip to the region by Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, where he will emphasise the importance of stopping people smuggling.
And joining us now is Conservative councillor Holly Whitbread. Good morning to you, Holly. So there's a big whistle-stop charm offensive going on. Jenrick is going to Tunisia, Algeria, Italy, France, looking tough on the world stage, promising action to stop illegal immigration across the Mediterranean at source. The big question is, will it have any teeth?
Well, we all know this is one of the most important issues, and Rishi and the Conservative Party have listed it as one of their priorities. I think this is part of a wide suite of measures to help tackle illegal immigration, and actually it is the people smugglers at the source who are causing these illegal crossings. So I think it's a good step to take.
Really interesting view from David in Hartlepool, who's been in touch this morning. Good morning to you, David, who says the people smugglers are not the ones who are promoting migration, but for those who are here and have already made the crossing. So what do you make of that, Holly? Do you think that we're focusing it in the wrong place here? It needs to be on people who are already here.
Well, I think it's a two-part thing, because obviously we want to reduce the number of people coming over, so this is important in terms of that. But in terms of the people who are here, they need to go through the processing quicker, and actually we need to make it less desirable to come over here illegally as well, and that's an important part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense, as we said earlier. No, a lot of money's been spent already trying to stymie this. 61.5 million quid spent by the European Union in 2019 doesn't seem to have been effective. You can throw a lot of money at countries like Libya, which is 171 out of 180 on the World Corruption Index. So where's that money actually going to go? But in terms of how this affects people back in Britain, Holly, am I correct in saying you have 2 asylum hotels in your borough?
Yeah.
What are the concerns of locals? Because often locals, when they speak out about these things, they get called racist, they get called small-minded. But what are people actually saying to you at ground level?
So we have 2 hotels in Epping Forest, and the biggest concern is about infrastructure, and people are worried about GP places, school places, and there are worries about that, and actually they're legitimate concerns. So, I mean, in terms of as a council, we've made objections to it, and what we want to see is, first of all, when these hotels exist, that the communities get the necessary payments and support, but ideally they shouldn't exist at all, and that's something that the government are trying to tackle, and we are seeing kind of a move away from the hotel model, but obviously there's a long way to go in terms of getting through that backlog as well.
And there's no easy fix, is there, as we've seen with the Conservative governments for a very long time now. Now, Holly, another story, big political story out today, is the government discussing plans for supermarkets to introduce a price cap on everyday items such as bread and milk.
Here we have it.
What do you make of that?
It's an interesting policy discussion. I mean, ideologically, I don't like the idea of price caps. However, the reality is the cost of food is having a massive impact on people's lives. I mean, you can see, you just go and get a bag of shopping and it's probably double the price almost that it was last year, and that is making people's lives very difficult. And the supermarkets have had a good time, particularly during the pandemic. So I think it's right that the government enter these conversations and see if we can come to a sensible agreement.
OK, Holly Whitbread, we've got to leave it there, I'm afraid, but really, really good to have you with us. Thank you very much.
OK, of course, it's Bank Holiday Monday and the first day of the half-term holidays. Yesterday was the hottest day of the year so far. So what can we expect for today and the rest of the week ahead?
Well, let's ask meteorologist Craig Snell, who joins us live now from the Met Office. Good morning to you, Craig. So yesterday was just fabulous, wasn't it? 24 degrees down in Plymouth, hottest day of the year so far. But we hear there's more to come this week.
Yeah, you're correct. The weather's timed itself perfectly for not only the bank holiday, but for this half term. Lots of the UK seeing dry and fine weather as we go through the course of this week. If you're living along the east coast, we're always going to be plagued a little bit by some cloud and generally feeling a little bit cooler here. Probably the mid-teens in Celsius, but further west, pleasant conditions, temperatures climbing up towards 24, 25 degrees as we go through the next few days. So certainly the warmest spell of weather what we've seen so far this year. So hopefully good news for holiday makers and also our local tourist industries too.
And so what can we thank for bringing this weather to our shore? Where's it coming from? Is it a high pressure system coming from Africa?
It's actually homegrown. We've got this area of high pressure just situated right across the UK. So this time of year, the sun is quite strong. So when you've got blue skies and the sunshine, it just each day will just warm up, up, up and up. So, yeah, so it's not one of them typical kind of heat wave affairs when we see the warm air coming up from Spain. This is like literally just homegrown late spring / early summer kind of weather. And the high pressure doesn't look like it's going to go anywhere too soon, even into this weekend and even beyond into next week. As we go into the first full week of June, it looks like it should be generally settled. May start to see a few showers break out as we go into next week, but for half term at least, it's looking fine and dry for most.
Oh, it is fabulous if you're staying home for half term as well, because lots of people are jetting off to Spain where it's going to be raining all week. It's like we've swapped weather systems for the week. But Craig, it does feel finally as though we're getting this spring-summer weather that has been delayed this year, it feels.
Yes, spring certainly has been two halves really. Like March and April was pretty cold and we certainly had some wet weather. This month, even it shocked me. Actually, we're kind of running quite warm for the month of May. We're actually the 6th warmest May on record at the moment as it stands. So even though we've not really experienced any major kind of hot spells, the month has been steadily warm. And as I said, next few days, probably just turning that thermostat up just a little bit more. So finally, I think most of us feeling like summer is beginning to show its face across the UK.
Well, you've made people go hurrah across the nation. Thank you very much, Craig Snell, for bringing us some warm news on a beautiful, warm morning. Thank you for that from the Met Office.
Oh, it's fabulous, isn't it? I love the sunshine. I think it lifts everyone's mood.
Totally.
Yeah. Let us know what you're up to today. You're going to be enjoying the sunshine. You're going to be heading back from your bank holiday. Do let us know. And good luck if you're heading out on the road today as well, because I think it could be quite busy out there. Yeah. Right, it's 18 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And a man charged with the murder of a 17-year-old boy in Sheffield will appear in court today. 29-year-old Peshawar Ghaffur from the city fatally stabbed Mohammed Iqbal in the Crooks area on Tuesday. He later died in hospital. A 33-year-old man was also arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender.
President Erdogan has won the presidential election in Turkey to take his rule into a third decade. Erdogan received just over 52% of the vote, with his opponent securing nearly 48%. Rishi Sunak has sent his congratulations, saying he looks forward to continuing a strong collaboration between the UK and Turkey.
And witnesses to major crimes such as the Manchester Arena bombing will be offered similar support nationwide to bereaved families after an expansion of homicide services. Anyone who directly witnesses such an incident and any child or young person who knows the victim can also be referred.
Now stay with us, because coming up, as hit TV show Succession airs its final episode, we'll ask if working with your family can ever end well. This is GB News Breakfast.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, welcome back. The time is 7:23, still lots to come on today's programme.
At 7:45, we'll meet the inspiring veteran who's become the first ever double above-the-knee amputee to scale Everest. Inspiring story.
I'm so excited for that. At 8:10, as thousands of people across the country prepare to travel home after the bank holiday weekend, we'll look at the chaos on the roads and in the skies. Or at the E-Gates. which have also been causing chaos.
Yeah, brace yourselves, man. I'm actually quite glad we're back here. And I travelled yesterday and sort of, I think, got ahead of the tsunami.
I think you probably did, yeah. And it's going to be nice weather as well, so if you're staying at home, it might not be a bad thing. Do keep joining in any of our discussions this morning. You can email us, gbnews@gbnews.com. It's our new email, or you can tweet us at GBNews. Lots of you getting in touch this morning. We've been talking about a food price cap. The government is talking about implementing one on everyday items such as bread and milk. Lots of you getting in touch on that. Helen says if it costs £2 to produce a loaf of bread or a pint of milk, that's exactly what we should be paying.
And Mike here, no nonsense view. Price fixing food is a communist policy. This is a dangerous and slippery slope.
Another Mike says producers should be made to fund any price cap.
And Tony in Suffolk is saying they already run a cheaper range of goods, so what's new that this Tory government can bring? Nothing. People are sceptical.
Yeah, they are. Donald is of the supermarkets. He says, how stupid do the supermarkets think we are? Just look at their recent profit figures. Of course, they say they have nothing to do with profiteering.
And Helen here, I think, is raising a great point. She's saying... I beg your pardon. Nicholas says, as governments give with one hand and take with another, supermarkets keep their profit margins by transferring the price onto other goods, so the shopper never wins.
Yeah, well, let us know what you make of that. Is it the government that needs to fix this issue? Is it the supermarkets who've done very, very well at the fuel forecourts, it must be said, in recent months? Let us know what you think. gbnews@gbnews.com. Well, the final episode of the HBO series Succession came to a close last night. It's still trending all over Twitter, so it must have been good. And it brought an end to the intense family drama after 4 seasons.
But one of the key aspects of the show is the issues involved with working with your family. Is the show a bad portrayal of what working with your family could be, or is it more realistic than we all may care to think?
Well, Pip Jays is the owner of the family business, Jays of Earls Barton. She says that working with your family is a huge advantage, while Jeremy Scouse says, who's the CEO of Catalyst Mediation, says that family businesses still have the potential to go horribly wrong. Well, good morning to you both and welcome to breakfast. Pip, let's start with you, shall we? So you have experience of this and you love working with your family.
I do. I love I work with my mum and my sister. We work for a family business that was established in 1981. So it's been going some time. We're in our 43rd year, and Anna and myself have been working for the family business for just under 20 years now. We're a coffee shop and a gift shop, and we also have some museums and exhibitions on board.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. And what are the positives, the benefits of working with your family?
So I think a key one from a business point of view is the flexibility it gives you. You know, if we have an idea, the three of us in the morning, sometimes if we have everything in place, by lunchtime, that idea is implemented. So it's really flexibility. And on the flip side, if something isn't working, we recognise it quickly and we can change it quickly. I mean, there's lots of benefits. Sorry, the fun, the laughter, the banter. It's great fun.
Jeremy, in terms of the real-life echoes of Succession, it's one of the big problems is that young people just don't like being told what to do by their elders.
I think you're right, Martin. Morning, Pip. Morning, Ellie. The problem often with families, and Pip's actually just strengthens the idea of how some families can have really good communication. So they can come up with that idea in the morning and they can have it implemented by the evening. If that communication doesn't exist, or if it is very one-sided, and that's really where the whole Succession thing comes in, because there really only was one voice on that programme, even though he's now been stilled permanently, possibly, or he might stage a comeback, you know.
No spoilers, please.
Just gave away the show.
Yeah, he only lives up the road from us when he is in Scotland, so yes, possibly. If the communication isn't there, then there's no trust, and you will end up with a minor version of Succession or even exactly what's happened. So like any relationship, you have to have good chats, you're going to have disagreements, you've got to be able to have that communication. Pip's nodding ahead. my guess is you and your sister and your mum have had the occasional disagreement.
We have, and I think a key thing is the ability to compromise, to realise that not all of your ideas will be taken on board. And also a key thing is just to hold your hands up if something hasn't worked. And if there is a bit of a disagreement, to apologise and move on quickly.
Pip, what do you think?
Because the relationship... Sorry, Ellie, go on.
I was just going to ask Pip what she thought of your point, which is that it does depend on the family dynamic. And if that one person holds all the power, it could be quite difficult to have those conversations, Pip.
Definitely. And my sister and I are really lucky in that my mum, she's always been open to any idea we've had. She'll say, let's give it a go, let's try it. So by her being like that, we've built up this sort of trust, as you said, Jeremy. We've got this trust between the three of us that's been built up, headed really by Mum, who's always been open to all ideas.
But you see often a very different side of people, Jeremy, particularly when somebody needs carpeting. Because let's face it, a part of business is telling people off. I worked with my auntie Celia. She had a lace factory in Nottingham, lace industry, very big up there. And she'd always been lovely to me until the moment I started working for her. And she absolutely tore me to bits. I saw a completely different side to her, which I frankly never got over. I know she watched the show, Auntie Celia, gave me PTSD. But is that an issue? The fact that, if you tell somebody off who's a family member, then they remember it and carry it into the home environment later on.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The problem of a family business is where you can't separate the two. So you work in a studio, you leave the studio, you go home, you hopefully leave, all the bad things and the good things about work at work. It's quite difficult to do that if you are not only working in your home, and I don't know how close Pip's home is to where she works, but if there's no travel time, there's no time for you to unwind, you will take the tension, you will take the conflict, you'll take it home. And we all know that we have spouses who have to put up with us when we come back after a bad day in the office. And if
Jeremy,
you get
what do you...
an aunt...
Sorry, Jeremy. What do you make of the generational divide in businesses? Because you'd often find, especially sounds the case in Pip's example, where the first generation is the founder, they've started that business, they're the grafter, and the second generation that comes through, they want to future-proof it, they want to focus on investment. They're coming at two different angles, aren't they?
Yeah, quite often if you don't get that relationship that Pip alluded to between her and her sister and her mother, you can find that the older generation has a control problem. They may be looking at the business as a way of funding their future, of their retirement. And when, as you just said, Ellie, when the younger generation want to invest in doing new things, diversifying the business, there's a clash over who controls what happens to the money. And that can spread into all sorts of control issues.
And what about the sort of real-life echoes of the show? Siblings fighting for who's going to be handed the baton for the next of command. Have you heard any stories about this tearing families apart?
You've just described my average working week.
So tell us about it.
Well, you do get very bad examples of coercive control. You can have fathers who will not listen to their sons, who will belittle them, who will make them feel stupid. You can have examples of siblings who do demonstrate the sort of rivalry that's shown in Succession, where one of them will try to get the approval of his parents over his sibling. And that can create tensions within the second generation, which then spills into the tensions between the first and second. Pip's looking horrified. It does happen in other families. But...
Yeah, we're nothing like Succession at Jay's. No, we all get along. But it does mean compromise. And when you are in a family business, it can be all-consuming. So, yeah, you do have to kind of make a bit of a conscious effort when you get home or when you are socialising as a family. We do socialise a lot as a family, that you kind of don't mention work too much. You know, inevitably it does come up, but sometimes the kids will have some input. And actually, you know what? One of their ideas might be a good idea, or my dad will say something, or my brother. And we're just open to all ideas. And occasionally, the three of us may let one of those little ideas come through, just occasionally.
And Pip, do you think Jays of Earls Barton will go on for a third generation now with your children?
Well, Anna and I would love it to. We're currently training my daughter and niece up over the summer to do a little summer job in the coffee shop. So we would love it to. But a key thing as to why we work is both Anna and I had lives and careers before we joined the family firm. So I lived and worked in Hong Kong and London. My sister had travelled extensively. So we'd lived in the real world and both done that before joining the family firm. And that would be my advice to anyone thinking about it, is have a career and a life before, and then when you do go in, you'll fully appreciate the benefits of it.
OK, Pip, Jeremy, really, really good to see you both this morning. Thanks so much for your thoughts there.
I thought that was really, really interesting. I mean,
really interesting.
I couldn't think of anything worse to work with my family. I just want to, separate family and business and just get on with it. And anyway.
No, I love my family dearly, but I couldn't work with them. I think we'd kill each other.
We'd kill each other.
I think you have a really low threshold when it comes to your family. Things annoy you about them, and you feel like you can say it because they're family, right? So things that you might let slide at work, where if it's family, it would turn into a row.
Yeah, well,
at least in my book it would.
Let us know what you think. If you work with your family, has it been great? Has it been a nightmare? Let us know. Have you got real-life succession in your family? So stay with us anyhow, as next we discuss AI. Good news for TV soap writers. They're not being replaced just yet by soap bots. Find out why when we go for the papers with Chris Akabusi and Anna Mikalova next.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 7:40 a.m. on this bank holiday Monday morning. Let's have a look at today's front pages now.
And The Times says police from the National Crime Agency will help countries in North Africa to identify and break up people smuggling gangs and a surge of migrants leaving for the UK.
And The Express reports on the supermarket's warning to Rishi Sunak that his price cap won't reduce food bills.
The Guardian reveals the Met Police will no longer respond to mental health call-outs unless there's a threat to life.
And the Mail continues its Schofield coverage as its former medic, Dr. Ranj Singh, hits out at what he calls the toxic This Morning culture.
Well, joining us to go through the papers in more detail this morning is Olympian Chris Akabusi and Deputy Political Editor at The Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikhailova. Good morning to you both.
Good morning.
Chris, let's start with this story in The Guardian this morning. The front page that police in London will no longer attend mental health call-outs.
Yeah, I think that we have to welcome this. The Commissioner, Mr Rowley, or Sir Mark Rowley, should I say, is saying that the police basically need to stop being a social service and get on with policing. That's what they are really paid for. And as has transpired over time, they've gone from being there as an emergency service for mental health issues to being a key component enabling the dysfunction. So a letter was written on the 24th of this month to implement the ban. On the 31st of this month, only going to go out to life-threatening issues. And it's very important because in the last few months, 10,000 hours are dealt with dealing with health issues. And it can take 14 hours for a police officer's time. And what it means is less policemen on our streets dealing with crime, dealing with the issues that we want them to be taken care of. So in a way, I do really welcome this effort by Mr Rowley.
Yeah, and I think it's a key point. So we had Mike Neville on the show, he's a retired Detective Chief Inspector, and he said 27,000 mental health call-outs to the Met alone last year. Meanwhile, we've got 30,000 unsolved muggings. It stands to reason. The police aren't responding to mental health call-outs or missing person call-outs or policing tweets and not the streets. They can actually get back and solve crime where it matters, on the street.
So basically, each parastatal of the state, each to their own tent. And, you know, policing should be for policing. And although, of course, you know, ambulances and paramedics and NHS staff may be a little bit alarmed at not having this additional resource, that's the problem. It's been seen as an additional resource rather than an emergency capacity. And we've got to stop it to sort of enable the system to recalibrate and sort itself out. I'm talking about the NHS system, obviously.
Anna, what do you make of this? Because surely it should never have been one of the responsibilities of the police in the first place.
I think that is true, but I don't think this is Mark Rowley's call to make unilaterally. So the problem here is this is the fault of our crumbling social care system, which is completely broken. And by the police saying we're not going to do this anymore, I mean, Chris correctly said they have been a key part of this service, and all it will do is put even more pressure on ambulances, even more pressure. So you can't just sort of pull off a key part of it and not have any plan in turn. And, you know, that's not the police's job to do. That's the government's job to figure out. Obviously, it's just not happening.
Yeah,
So this concerns you?
Yeah, it definitely concerns me. I mean, I also know that the police do really important work that isn't just on the streets. And I think that is also really important to highlight. This is one of them. The other thing that they do is whenever there's a sudden death, the police always come, and they're actually usually really good with families and can be really good. So that's also important to highlight. The police's job isn't just going after people on the street, but yeah, they should focus on that more. But someone else should devise a plan to actually fix the whole system.
It was fascinating, Chris, what the officer told us, Mike Neville. 70% of officers haven't arrested a single person in an entire year. He said back in his day, he used to arrest 4 people a day. He was laying the blame more squarely at the fact. Back in his day, he said 50% of officers had medals on their chests, former armed services. Now we have a graduate culture. Student officers, perhaps they're not right for the job of enforcing the law at street level.
Yeah, well, also the younger demographic that's coming into policing are of the contemporary society and its zeitgeist, and a sense of, you know, giving leeway and understanding the different mentalities, etc., as opposed to back in the day, police were policemen, rules and regulations, and this is how we deliver our policing. It's gone from, I remember it going from a police force enforcing the legal process to a police service serving the community. And in that juxtaposition says a lot. Now, I do, on the one hand, understand a little bit more caring from our men and women in blue. Nonetheless, you're still there, number one, solve crime, police crime.
Yeah.
Anna, let's go to something totally different now, shall we? In the Daily Star. Soap writers' jobs, they're safe for now.
Yes, the people we were all worried about, soap writers. So the Daily Star has conducted an investigation by using this AI chat GPT that everyone's talking about to try and write some soaps for Coronation Street, feeding in old plot lines and seeing what it came up with. And apparently it was absolutely appalling. So there won't be any Corrie episodes coming to our screens written by AI anytime soon.
So you know, I'd heard a lot about this chat, whatever it's called, and then I was at a home and someone said, OK, let's do a quiz on Chris Akabusi. Not that you want to have the quiz. And anyway, there are 10 questions to Chris Akabusi, and the majority of them were wrong. The answers that the bot came up with were totally wrong.
Fake news from the bot.
It was fake news, exactly. And it's fortunate, I looked at it and said, well, that's not true. No, I came first, not second. You know, so you can't rely on the information. So ultimately, you've got all this stuff, and it might produce content for you, but it's still going to require somebody, a person that's really keen and understands the industry, to go through it and then edit and redact the information that's important material.
AI gets a lot of bad press, but I think, you know, would you like a sort of AI Prime Minister? I think I would. You know, if decisions
AI This Morning host.
Yeah. You know, but if decisions were made based on logic and not feelings or what might be offensive, we might, for example, have more people nicked for muggings and less people being offended about social media posts. We might get stuff done.
I wouldn't like it, Barney, because with all due respect, it would miss the nuance. It would just be black and white, right or wrong, hard cut, and a lot of nuance. You know, there was a boundary between right and wrong, but it's porous, and you need to be able to understand the nuance around everything. So no, it would be too hard cut, and innocent people would get into room 101.
Yeah.
Chris, let's have a look in the eye, shall we? This is page 5. Ready for war in space, says viewer.
Yeah, this really, having a sort of military background, it's really sort of piqued my interest. So Brigadier General Jesse Morehouse, US Space Command, says that he's ready for war in space, and basically it's communications and a satellite network, and one of the first rules in war is to capture the communication posts, because if you capture communication posts, you control the narrative. And also, but in this particular, the satellites, it's threefold. You not only captured communication posts. But if you destroy satellites, you destroy the ability for the enemy to communicate, and you also destroy the ability for the enemy to use their spy networks. The downside, obviously, is that you have all this debris that's flying around space that gets drawn into our own stratosphere, and what happens next. What really worried me, though, was the fact that the US are going to contend on behalf of the Western world, whereas China, Russia and India have got their own space capability. I'm worried for the United Kingdom. If there is a space war going on and we're going to be knocking out satellites, we need to be doing our own. We can't be relying on anybody, otherwise we really are stuck to the coattails of our big brother, the United States. So I was interested in the article. It is worth a read. And finally, Brigadier Jesse Moore says, this will become a norm to warfare. So trust me, this is not a future thing. It's happening and will become the norm to knock out satellites. So your Jack TP AI, that won't work anyway because the satellite will be knocked out.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense. I mean, they're fighting over everything else. They're fighting over what's underneath the Antarctic. They're fighting over what's underneath the oceans.
I think better have war in space than on the ground where people live.
Yeah, fair point. Anna, another battlefront, so to speak, is mothers. Saw in the Times here, the front page, poor maternity care left us in danger, say 1 in 4 mothers.
Yeah, this is a really shocking story, once again highlighting the massive problems in maternity care in the NHS. So just a year ago, we had the Ockenden report that showed absolutely appalling failures in one hospital, but now the Times has been running this health commission that looks across the board. They've got this survey reporting how mothers said they were left in danger or not listened to, being told ridiculous things like one woman who had parts of a placenta left in her still, weeks later was just being told, oh, your symptoms are just because it's tough being a young mother. I mean, absolutely awful. And a really shocking statistic here is that the NHS is spending more than twice as much on the cost of harm it causes by its maternity services than on the services itself. Now, you look at that and you say, anyone who sort of sees the NHS as this big sacred cow has to really think twice about how much this money pit spends on correcting its own mistakes, because this isn't just in this area. And when the government sees every solution as throwing more money at it and rightfully expects results, what actually is happening when you look at the detail is people are being served really poorly. Doctors and hardworking nurses are also being served poorly. And the whole thing needs an absolute rethink. But
there is a huge lack of information when you become a mother or a father. You're basically, here's your baby, off you go. And you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a load of pressure about you must breastfeed, which can be really damaging to mums who are unable to do so.
Yeah, as some people say, it's the only situation where you're sort of recovering from extreme surgery and essentially told to run a marathon the next day and looking at, keep a tiny baby alive at the same time.
Yeah, you would like to think, though, and I know it doesn't apply for everybody, that you can rely on your grandparents. I think traditionally that's what used to happen, is that a young mum would have a grandparent who's been there, seen it, done it. Obviously, you're a result of that, and they can support you through that system. I know that, in my case, my ex-wife, she's a phenomenal resource to my daughter, who's got four of our grandchildren, and relies very heavily on my ex-wife.
Superb.
OK, Chris, Anna, really good to see you. You're back in the next hour, aren't you? So we'll see you then. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. OK, it was the inspiration and setting for 2 of Agatha Christie's most iconic works, and it's played host to all manner of celebrities, from Noel Coward to the Beatles.
Well, now Burgh Island Hotel, complete with a 21-acre island off the coast of Devon, is on the market, and it could be yours for a cool £15 million.
And in very dramatic character, our South West of England reporter Jeff Moody took a day trip out to the island to find out more.
The sea tractor that takes you to Burgh Island only lasts a few minutes, but it takes you back in time. On the island, the 1930s are in full swing.
It is just an amazing place, and of course it has one of the largest collections of Art Deco antiques and artefacts in the country. So as it is now, Noel Coward, Agatha Christie et al. Would have walked on those same floorboards. They would have been touching a lot of the same bits of architectural interest. So it has that feeling of history, deeply seated within it.
So says Giles Fuchs, the current owner. Over the years, guests have included Winston Churchill and President Eisenhower. Head of Guest Relations Vlad Krupa told me the parties on the island are legendary.
There are many parties. Some of them I can't really disclose, because it's saying what happens on the island stays on the island. So if you want to have an exclusive party, so pretty much when you hire the whole hotel, it is not just the hotel. You need to think that when tide comes in, you have actually hired the whole entire island for yourselves.
Guests come here from around the world to experience the hospitality and the food.
It's pressure that we can't handle. It's cooking great food, keeping it seasonal, keeping it simple. To us, keeping it simple and just trying to put a show on, just like out front.
A show that drew the attention of the world's most prolific author, West Country writer Agatha Christie. But it wasn't so much the glamour that appealed to her imagination. It was the setting itself. In arguably her greatest novel of all time, certainly the one that she said she was most proud of, and then there were none. 10 strangers receive a summons to come to a mysterious house on an island off the coast of Devon. When they get here, the storm creeps in. They find themselves trapped. And every night, one of them ends up dead, until there's just one left.
And it's not difficult to understand why she chose this as a location, because it's in the winter when the sea is up and the wind is blowing. It does feel menacing. It's a very different feeling in the winter with the storms coming off the Atlantic.
Giles is philosophical about selling. It's time for new input, a fresh pair of eyes.
I think I'll be fine with it. I'll say goodbye and I'll return, and I've done my bit. I'm leaving it better than when I found it.
The hope now is the new owner will continue Giles's work and Burgh Island will remain one of the most magical and mysterious hotels in the world. Jeff Moody, GB News.
Oh, it looks wonderful, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've got to say, 15 million quid, OK, it's a lot of money, but for what you get there, 21 acres, your own island, all that heritage, beats like a penthouse in London, surely.
No, that's true, If you think about what you get in the capital city, it's not bad, is it, 15 million? Well, it looks great in the sunshine as well. I'm sure it's a great day to be there today.
And Jeff enjoyed it, that's for sure.
One day, Jeff certainly enjoyed it.
He was getting really into character.
Yeah, we really enjoyed that. It's a great report. Do stay with us, though. We'll have the latest on the future of this morning as one of the show's former stars speaks out against the show's culture.
Yeah, but first, Jonathan Vautry has your all-important bank holiday weather forecast.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your bank holiday forecast for GB News by the Met Office. It's not often that we get to say there's a bank holiday where we'll have a lot of fine weather, but make the most of it because high pressure is sticking with us throughout the day, keeping things dry for many of us, and there'll be a lot of warm sunshine to be had. There is, though, a bit of a squeeze in the ice bars across the very far south, so it is going to be breezier across coastal areas of England, so feeling cooler as that drags in some air from the North Sea. But elsewhere, there'll be a lot of sunshine to be had and really quite glorious if you are stepping outside. Temperatures in the western areas climbing to highs of around 20 degrees Celsius. Even parts of the central belt should climb towards those high figures. But as we said, eastern areas of England probably feeling that bit cooler where you are exposed to the breeze. Cloudy across the far north of Scotland, and it will bring the odd spots of drizzle throughout the day and overnight as well. And actually that cloud is going to slowly circulate its way down in that breeze and start pushing into eastern coastal areas of England as we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, potentially turning quite murky here. But elsewhere we'll hold on to clear spells overnight, the odd mist patch possible underneath those clear skies as well. Temperatures falling off into low single figures for towns and cities, but a patchy frost is possible in some rural areas. Where you've had the clear spells overnight, though, it does mean you'll start off once again on Tuesday with a lot of sunshine, and you'll probably hold on to it for much of the day as well. It's going to be those eastern coastal areas, though, that actually hold on to the cloud, and it could be quite stubborn to clear its way off throughout the day. So feeling, again, quite cool underneath that cloud, but where you do have the sunshine, temperatures climbing into the low 20s and should be another pleasant day if you are still heading outside. High pressure is staying with us throughout the week, so we'll get a fairly repeat situation where eastern areas will stay often rather cloudy and cool, but temperatures higher over in the west. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
This is Boston, or at least a part of it anyway.
What we voted for has backfired.
You don't see many locals about anymore.
Do you feel as though you've got what you asked for?
No, not at all.
From my point of view, yes. From a business point of view.
This was to campaign to just to get a referendum.
Just to get a referendum.
We need people like Nigel to grab it, come on, lead the country.
They tell us at elections what they want us to hear, but they never actually really mean it.
We're proud to be GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
A former This Morning star speaks out about life behind the lens as TV executives battle to save the beleaguered show.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock on this bank holiday Monday, the 29th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ellie Costello and Martin Daubney.
And here's what's leading the news today. As we just said, Dr. Ranj Singh has hit out at what he calls the toxic culture this morning as the controversy around its main anchor, Philip Schofield, continues.
Supermarkets warn the Prime Minister that limiting prices on basic food items won't bring down grocery bills. Rishi Sunak is currently in talks to cap costs on staple goods, but government sources stress any scheme will be voluntary.
And British police officers will be tasked with breaking up people smuggling gangs in North Africa amid warnings that 400,000 migrants could enter Europe through Italy this summer.
And the Met Police will stop attending mental health calls. It's in an attempt to free up resources. From September, officers will only attend incidents related to mental health if there's immediate threat to life.
And get in touch with us via Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.com and let us know where you're watching or listening to from this morning so we can give you a shout out. And Eddie, there's tons coming in.
Yeah, there certainly is. Mark says supermarkets are guilty of greedflation, and Peter says until such a time as the economy improves, supermarkets should only be able to make annual profits equal to average wage increases.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Peter again reacting. Rishi Sunak, of course, saying that supermarkets should limit the prices of staples like bread, milk and butter. Peter is saying puts a cap on profits. To the point there. He's got a fair point. It's like, it's okay for the supermarkets to say we can't bring prices there, but how much dosh have they made, Ellie, from forecourt petrol prices and during COVID lockdowns?
Yep. Ken says all we need to do is for the general public to boycott one of the big supermarkets. If we do this on a national level, they would be forced to reduce their prices.
Yeah, Mark also putting the boot into the big four supermarkets, saying supermarkets are guilty of greedflation, deliberately overpricing.
Yeah, keep your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com.
And so to our top story, former This Morning star Dr. Ranj Singh has criticised the toxic culture on the show in a further blow to ITV.
Yes, he said he had no knowledge of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger member of staff, but claimed that issues with the show go far beyond the presenter's own behaviour.
In response to the statement, an ITV spokesperson said the channel was fully committed to providing every opportunity for anyone who works with them to raise any concern or comments they may have.
So, after almost 35 years on air, can the show still go on? We've been asking you what you think.
It'd be a shame if the show was axed because of the actions of one individual. I think that they probably need to rethink the structure and the culture of the work environment there, but ultimately I think the show should go on.
Did something that was pretty, questionable. And if it was him having an affair with a girl that age, it would have been a lot more of an uproar, I think.
We don't know both sides really, so I don't like to jump to conclusions, but if it's true, it is quite bad. But I don't know, I can see people are saying that Holly's a little bit uncomfortable in some situations, but I don't know if I guess we've got to see what happens.
Joining us now is Showbiz journalist Ellie Phillips. Ellie, it's great to have you in the studio. The big question now, of course, is can the show go on? Or, after so many toxic revelations, is the brand simply too tarnished?
Yeah, I think it's going to have to go for a huge revamp, whether that's a change of name, whether that's completely new faces fronting it. Obviously, Philip's no longer there. If Holly stays, they might find it really difficult to kind of have a clean slate because people associate her so closely with Philip. They were always a brand that came together. I mean, I know he started with Fern Britton many years ago, but having been together on that sofa for over a decade, it's very hard to see them separately than it is together. So, yeah, I think a rebrand. The thing is, that time slot's going to have to be filled. That's going to be there. So I think a change of name might help, rebranding, new presenters fronting it, but also now with the revelations that Ranj Singh and others have come out with, you've got to mention Eamonn Holmes, you've got to mention Dan Wootton, and more people coming out with things saying actually it's more widespread of an environment that wasn't a good one, essentially. That has opened a Pandora's box. The cards are falling, and I think because of all of that, it's going to be people behind the scenes now as well that are called into question, not just Philip. So, I mean, specific individuals have been named and they're very senior, so potentially behind the scenes that will have to change too.
And meanwhile, the show literally goes on because it's going to be on air at 10 o'clock this morning with Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary. What's your sense of how the team are feeling, the ones that are left behind, that are reeling with this and dealing with it every single day?
I feel really bad for them, if I'm honest, because I think, like some of the viewers said there in the comments, that it's really hard to have one person's actions tarnish an entire organisation. And for many people that are working there now, I'm talking from, makeup artists to runners to wardrobe to everyone, they won't even have been there when the individual in question, the young man, was working there. So they may not even have any knowledge of what was going on. And yet people will be questioning them when they say where they work. Will it be, did you know? Why didn't you say something? But also got to point out that a lot of people in the media industry are freelancers. So to say to them, why didn't you say something? That's a really risky thing to do. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but as a freelancer, if you raise a concern and that is dismissed essentially by senior bosses, they don't have to sack you, they don't have to fire you, they just don't book you anymore. And it's that easy. So you risk losing your job and you say, well, what's more important? It's a really difficult situation to be in. So I do feel for a lot of them.
And that's what Dr. Ranj is saying, isn't it? Exactly that. He felt like he was a whistleblower. He called out this toxic work culture, as he described it, and he wasn't booked anymore.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen a lot. I've seen that happen a lot. I think we've all been in that situation in a workplace where either we've experienced, been on the bad end, receiving end of really negative behaviour, or we've seen it go on. How many of us have really raised that with seniors? And if we have, what's been done about it? What have been the actions afterwards? I just hope that what this does, beyond what's come out from Philip Schofield, is that people now feel more empowered to raise concerns with senior bosses and hope and know that they won't be ousted because of them, because I think that's really important.
So the big question now, obviously, is with Dermot and Alison today, and Holly's on a semester, sitting this one out. I guess the questions would be, how much did she know? How involved was she? If the news goes bad for her, can she not only not survive being on This Morning, but does she have a future with ITV? Will she get through this, do you think, or will the guilt by association simply be too much?
I think she's definitely still got a future with ITV. I can't see them dropping her completely from the organisation at all. She's a very good presenter. She's solid at what she does. However, mud sticks, and they did have this close relationship. She has said she asked him, he lied. ITV themselves put out statements saying presenters didn't know, he lied to presenters. So they are definitely trying to keep her as clean as possible from this, obviously in a bid to keep her there. I don't know whether she continues or not. The worrying thing is that's come out really recently, I think it came out yesterday, a report that actually when Philip came out as gay in February 2020, just weeks before at the National Television Awards, allegedly the man in question that he was having a relationship declared his love for Philip to colleagues, including Holly Willoughby. He was then allegedly thrown out of the NTAs and just a couple of weeks later was swiftly moved to Loose Women, and Philip then came out as gay on national television, allegedly to get ahead of the news. So because of that, and now there's this accusation that at that point people knew that something clearly had been going on. I don't know how you get around that.
There could be more of the story to come, I sense, Ellie. Thank you very much.
Yeah, superb.
Now, it's Bank Holiday Monday today, the day after the hottest day of the year so far. Well, earlier we spoke to meteorologist Craig Snell, who said there were good times for everyone this week.
Not only the bank holiday, but for this half term, lots of the UK seeing dry and fine weather as we go through the course of this week. If you're living along the east coast, we're always going to be plagued a little bit by some cloud and generally feeling a little bit cooler here. Probably the mid-teens in Celsius, but further west, pleasant conditions, temperatures climbing up towards 24, 25 degrees as we go through the next few days. So certainly the warmest spell of weather what we've seen so far this year. So hopefully good news for holiday makers and also our local tourist industries too.
Oh, looks marvellous, doesn't it? But if you struggle to get away this bank holiday weekend, well, you're not alone. This weekend was predicted to be the busiest late May bank holiday since 2019 after lockdown, remember, with 19 million separate leisure car trips planned.
Yes, and there were queues at airports on Saturday after a major failure of the e-gate system across the UK.
So what are the airports and roads likely to look like? Let's speak now to travel guru, the legend that is Simon Calder, who's currently on holiday in Poland. Simon, you certainly get about. How's your trip from Germany to where you are?
Well, OK, my journey has actually been relatively smooth since I managed to get away. So I was booked on British Airways. They had a big IT failure on Thursday. I was booked on Friday. My first flight was cancelled, but then I managed to get a seat out to Prague on the final flight of Friday night, by which stage we were seeing at the UK Border Force complete failure of eGate. Just a reminder, these things work really well as long as you're not travelling with under 12s. If you're British, if you're EU, Australian, or New Zealand, American, Canadian, Japanese, Singaporean, or South Korean, you just whiz through. That covers about 70% of us. As a result of that, then you can find that you will get through very, very swiftly. But the system just failed right across the UK, at Heathrow, at Gatwick, at Manchester, at Stansted, and all the other airports. Many thousands of people spent many hours waiting in line because, of course, the system couldn't process them. The UK Border Force staff had to look at every passport manually, and they simply weren't staffed up for it. Since then, that got fixed around about tea time on Saturday night. We've got a few residual flight problems, some of them just sort of business as usual, air traffic control delays, but nothing too bad. I'm more concerned, actually, about the roads and the railways this year, because this week, because of course we've got the misery of yet more rail strikes coming down the track, and for certainly today and for the next few days, if the fine weather we've been hearing about continues, everybody is going to be heading for the seaside.
Yes, of course, Simon, and it's half term as well, isn't it? So it does mean that lots of people are getting out and about. How are the roads and rails looking for the rest of the week?
OK, so let's start on the roads. The motoring organisations had already warned before we knew what great weather it was going to be that there were going to be 19 million extra car journeys being made. I think that will increase now. Roads to and from the resorts are going to be very particularly hard hit by that. On top of that, you have got the interesting situation of the next rail strike. So your rail ticket once again becomes a bit of a lottery ticket. The train drivers walk out on Wednesday the 31st and on Saturday the 3rd of May. Those are going to be the most significant strikes. It's affecting over a dozen train operators, including all the big long distance companies such as Avanti West Coast, TransPennine Express and so on. So that is going to be a problem as well. On top of that, you've got the RMT union, who will be going on strike as from the from Friday. So really all the way through from late Tuesday evening through to Sunday morning, there are going to be problems with the trains, and that's going to mess up lots of journeys. The only advice I can give is, if you're lucky enough to live in Wales or Scotland or Northern Ireland, your train operators will be running as normal. Everywhere else, just check before you try to travel by train.
Superb. Simon Cole, it's always a pleasure. What a fun tonight. I like the fact you had your little prop, you had your rail ticket on demand. Even though you're on Poland, you've got your visual cues. Excellent. Thank you very much, mate.
Always good to see you, Simon. Thank you. Well, it's thought that the bank holiday will help small businesses in towns and cities who've been suffering from the loss of income during the winter months.
Yeah, Will Hollis joins us now from Skegness. Hello there, Greg. This is Will, sorry. Superb up in Skeggy, a place I know well. I used to holiday there every year as a kid, either in Ingold Mills or Mablethorpe. Tell me, are they excited about the prospect of being flooded with tourists this bank holiday?
Yes, it's a bit of a hot spot, isn't it? It attracts people not just from the Midlands, but from around the country. Skegness is, of course, home to the original Butlins as well. And I'm sure you can see in the background, a tractor's just been going along, covering the beach and making sure that it's perfect for the people that are coming here. And the shutters are coming up on some of the ice cream stalls as well. But, of course, we do have high inflation. Food inflation's running at 19%. People want to come for ice creams. They want to come for fish and chips. But are they going to be having a few of them? Councillor Kirk from East Lindsey District Council when they come here this weekend?
We have a reputation on the East Coast of offering excellent value for money, and we're still doing that. If you look around you now, I can get 4 donuts for £2.50 and a 99 whippy ice cream for £1.80. That has got to be excellent value in anybody's money. I'm not saying you should only eat donuts and ice cream, but you're at the seaside, so go for it.
And how are those prices changing with high inflation? Because we know it's hitting everywhere. It must be hitting the seaside too.
Oh, it most definitely is. You know, whilst we offer excellent value for money, there will be slight increases in prices. You know, people have to make a living, people have to pay wages. So, of course, there'll be slight increases, but our gorgeous blue flag beaches are still free. So you can still come and have a fantastic day out, spend your money wisely, and it doesn't need to cost you the earth. It's still really, really good value for money, and probably the best value for money in the country. If you normally go to Scarborough or travel down, don't waste your petrol, don't waste your diesel. Come to the East Coast, come to Skegness. You'll have a fantastic welcome, some of the best beaches in the country, and amazing, excellent value for your food that you really shouldn't be eating.
This is the third bank holiday that we've seen in May. Are people going to be coming to the seaside? And do you think they're maybe going to be spending a little bit less money when they do come today? Or is it just that they're going to enjoy it in the same way that they do every year?
I think so. A place like Skegness, which is a traditional seaside town, we've been going since the late 1880s. You know, people will come here, people enjoy themselves. The roads were really, really busy on Friday when I was travelling up and down them. The seafront's been really busy all weekend. So, yeah, people will possibly be spending a little less money, but that doesn't mean they still can't have a great time.
It is starting to get a little bit busier. You can probably hear some people walking their dogs, getting the early morning dog walk in. I'm hoping that Steve might treat me to an ice cream. But we're here all day and we're going to be hearing from the people that are coming to choose Skegness for their bank holiday weekend throughout the morning.
Well, Will, you're not silly, are you? Bank holiday Monday and you head down to Skegness. What are you going to get from the stalls behind you? Do you fancy a donut or an ice cream?
I'm not really much of a donut man. We were just talking about that. I'm more of an ice cream guy. If you were going to go something, would it be ice creams or donuts?
Right now, it'd be one of these breakfast baps. That's where the wise money goes on the morning. Breakfast bap.
We'll start with some breakfast and maybe a coffee.
Then we can do ice cream after that. It'd be wrong to do it in the other way around, wouldn't it?
Yeah, you're totally right. Start with a breakfast and then work your way out from there. Perfect. Thanks so much, Will.
Absolutely love it. I love Skeg. I used to go there a lot as a kid. Skegness, it's so bracing. It certainly is when you walk about 2 miles and get in the North Sea. I'll tell you that much for free.
I know. Oh, 99s. I just love them. You get a sense of inflation, though, don't you, with 99s? Because they're not 99s anymore. As we just heard there from Will's guest, £1.80.
Yeah, that's almost two
Skegness.
99s.
Yeah, and in London, I saw one for sale the other day for £3.20 or something like that. So, I mean, it's a lot of money now for 99. The time is 20 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
And Labour says the gender pay gap for women in their 50s won't close until 2050 at current rates. Shadow Women and Equality Secretary Annalise Dawes says her party would take action to close the gap once and for all.
The Metropolitan Police will not attend emergency calls if they're linked to mental health incidents from September. That's unless there's an immediate threat to life. This is to provide the police with more time to do their core roles, instead of dealing with patients in need of medical help from experts.
And Jeremy Paxman will present his final University Challenge tonight after almost 3 decades on British TV. He announced he was stepping down from the programme after being diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
Now, British police officers will be tasked with cracking down on people smuggling gangs in North Africa. It's amid concerns that 400,000 people will attempt to enter Europe through Italy this summer.
Yeah, the warning comes ahead of the trip to the region by Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, where he will emphasise the importance of stopping people smuggling at source.
Well, joining us now is former Conservative advisor Claire Pearsall. Good morning to you, Claire. What do you make of this plan?
Well, for once, I think the Home Office and the government have got it absolutely right. The Middle East North Africa route is hugely important, and it is a great source of people trafficking, smuggling, and people coming through to mainland Europe. So I think that it is completely correct that we start looking at where people are coming from, where the conflict zones are, and working with those countries to ensure that they don't come through to mainland Europe and make their way across and then into the Channel.
I mean, Claire, everybody can agree this is a great idea, but I'm afraid it's been tried before. European Union has spent 61.5 million quid since 2019 trying to curtail numbers across the Med, but we had 145,000 last year. They're expecting more than double that this year. So how much of this is tough talk, window dressing, whistle-stop tours? But will it actually work? Will we see any net impact on the illegals coming over the Channel into the UK?
Well, I think that we can hope that it will. I can sense that you're not convinced by it. But if you look at the amount of investment going in from other countries, Italy are now making a much more concerted effort to stop these crossings because they're seeing the impact on their own country. The amount of people coming across has increased due to the conflicts in places like Iran, Iraq, Syria, the Yemen. So those have increased. People are more on the move now. So I think that all these countries coming together in that region, especially with the buy-ins from North Africa, places like Morocco and Algeria and Tunisia, then we should start to see a difference. Now, the one thing that would stop it would be for the conflict zones to die down and people not be on the move. But unfortunately, I think that's out of certainly the United Kingdom's reach. And it takes an international community to stop these things, which is now what we're starting to see.
About another big political story that's out today, which is the government discussing plans for supermarkets to introduce a price cap on everyday items like bread and milk and butter. It feels very 1970s, doesn't it? What do you make of this?
I'm extremely uncomfortable with the government coming in and telling private businesses what they can and cannot charge. It is extremely unconservative. And I also don't think it's going to work. Now, what's being suggested is a voluntary price cap on some items in supermarkets. So if it's voluntary, they don't have to buy into it. But I think that the people that will suffer the most out of any kind of price cap will be those farmers. If you think of dairy farmers who are incredibly low on profit margins, and most of them don't actually make a profit at all, and they've seen their costs increase. So all we're going to do is hurt the farming community, who we absolutely rely upon for these foods. I wish that we could start looking at a slightly wider range of measures that we could use, like looking at import tariffs, for example, on those foods that we cannot grow in this country, such as bananas, olive oil, coffee, those kind of things. Let's look at the tariffs, which would make more of a difference.
Your cynicism is being shared, as we can see here, by the Daily Express. They're saying that the caps won't work, no chance. And don't forget, the Express are normally very friendly towards Mr. Sunak, and they are having more than a whiff of cynicism. In fact, our viewers have been in touch today saying this feels more like communism than conservatism. So I think your sentiments there are echoed by the common sense viewers of GB News. Claire Purcell, thank you very much for joining us this Bank Holiday Monday. Have a great time in the sun.
And if you are a farmer who's watching or listening to us today, do get in touch and let us know what you think about price caps on food. It's going to affect you, isn't it? I mean, as Claire just touched upon there, which I think was a really good point, dairy farmers especially, only just scraping by. And perhaps instead of a price cap, you'd like to see something different, like red tape being cut. Let us know if you're watching and listening to us this morning. What would you like to see? And if you're doing a food shop and you're feeling that cost of food, that 19% food inflation, let us know what you think should be done to tackle that. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Totally agree with that, because I think we want to see more support and help for British farmers. That's one thing we promised after Brexit, not being squeezed, not having their margins cut down. Let's support great British farmers.
Stay with us, because up next, the spirit of the Blues lives on after Everton's magical survival. Queety has all the sport just after this.
Great.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back. The time is 8:30 on the nose. Still lots to come on today's programme.
Including at 8:45, we'll meet a man in Whitby who has come up with an unusual idea to keep seagulls from stealing people's chips. The fella's dressed up as a giant eagle. Look at him.
I am so looking forward to that. And as temperatures peak across the country, people are beginning to think about getting in shape for the summer. At 9:15, we're going to get tips on how to get beach body ready if you're over 50.
I think there's only one way of getting beach body ready, and that is dress as a giant eagle and charge up and down the seafront. That guy's burned off a few calories. He would burn off all those fish and chips.
Oh, brilliant. Only on GB News. But do keep getting in touch with any of the discussions that we're having this morning. gbviews@gbnews.com. It's our new email address. Lots of you doing so. A couple of views on Schofield. Susan said the show should stay. There are many people there who do such a good job. Pauline says the total opposite. It's time for This Morning to go.
Yeah, and on food prices, Chris in Cornwall says, I think we have all noticed that fuel is more expensive in supermarkets than small independents. And most food prices have increased disproportionately. So that's the greedflation we were talking about. Are they ramping up the prices deliberately to keep us fleeced?
Well, keep those views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com.
OK, a huge weekend for football, of course. It's time to go through all the latest sports news now with the legendary broadcast Paul Coit. Coity, here we are. So,
I love him.
You like, keep it coming.
That's what I like. Yeah.
You're right. And by the way, I'm liking the matching.
Well, this is what we're doing, you know.
Good. So tell us the Toffees.
Yes.
Everton once again dodged the bullet.
They have dodged the bullet again, and they seem to do it every year now. And Sean Dyche, who's the manager, is now saying this cannot keep happening. We can't keep finding ourselves in this position, going down to the last game of the season, and then having to avoid the drop. I mean, it's a great result. They beat Bournemouth. I'm watching the end of it and thinking Bournemouth are probably thinking, well, it's not really going to make any difference to our season whatsoever. All the crowd around Goodison Park are standing because they're all so nervous and there's so much tension there. And if I was playing for Bournemouth, I'd think, you know what?
Let them have it.
Let it go. We don't need to. I'm not going to, because there's probably going to be Everton fans now, and especially in this building, they're going to say, how could you say that? But it looked like that, and they've managed to do it. It's a great goal from Abdoulaye Doucouré, so he scored in the 57th minute. But let's not forget, in the first half, at 0-0, they were going down. Desperately needed a goal. So there's a celebration on the pitch afterwards. Yeah, there we are. There's everybody celebrating, and that's actually during the game. But you always have so many of these pitch invasions. It was a half-hearted pitch invasion. There we are. But the thing is, it's joy. Of course, it is incredible joy, the fact that they've managed to stay up. But also, then, as the days go on, you look back and think, we shouldn't be there. We have nothing to celebrate. It's been a terrible season again, but obviously it's more of a relief than a jubilation.
And in actual fact, they were getting booed by their own fans because it's a little bit embarrassing to be celebrating, avoiding the drop for a club of their stature.
Of course, but you can't help that. I mean, if you are a fan and you get so close. But the thing is, it's now standard. It's like every year they seem to be going through this.
Well, they've got away with it when it comes down to the crunch.
Absolutely.
Not good news, though, if you're a Leicester fan or a Leeds fan.
That's right. Leicester are gone. So they managed to beat West Ham, and it was interesting because at the end of when they won the title 7 years ago, they were all round at Jamie Vardy's house watching the Spurs-Chelsea game to see how their fate would be sealed. They saw the draw and celebrated. This time, players in the middle of the pitch, looking at a mobile phone, watching the Everton game, because that was still going on, although their game had finished, and then realised it's over for them. So Leicester, they've got huge bills that they pay, one of the highest bills when it comes to wages. So, nobody's too good to go down.
Yeah, I've got to say, as a Forest fan, I'm a bit sad to see Leicester go down, even though they are East Midlands' rival. Forest fans were cheering on Leicester when they won the Premier League.
Really? Were they?
Yeah, seriously.
Was that just you and your friends? There weren't many.
No, because it was a small club for an unfashionable city, just like Nottingham, and they did well, and now they're going to taste a lot of pain. It's going to be very hard for them to get back up.
Well, it all depends who goes. James Maddison is going to go. He's going to go anyway, but it's probably going to be on less of a fee than it would have been before. Harvey Barnes is going to go. It's now, right, what do? We're down. How many players are we going to keep? We need players that are actually going to fight for us and get back up again.
Finally, a good result for Tottenham.
Good result for Tottenham.
Yes.
You sound surprised when you said that.
They haven't been playing very well.
You're right. I mean, but it was Leeds, who were also fighting to stay up. They weren't good. They weren't good. Spurs were great, and Harry Kane again scoring 32 goals this season. So 4-1 to Spurs, and Leeds are gone as well. So that's it. Southampton gone, Leicester gone, Leeds gone.
Want to quickly cover Jeff Stelling, a sad departure after an unbelievable career.
I see what you did there. Yeah. Jeff's a great guy. Jeff's the ultimate broadcaster, over 30 years at Sky. Tributes only seem to come flooding in when people pass away, but Jeff is still working, but he's leaving Sky. He's now going to decide what he's going to do after this. But fantastic fella, great broadcaster, so he's left after all this time.
Why do you think he's going? Because I get a feeling he's been kind of death by 1,000 paper cuts about political correctness. He's had members of his team kicked out, all the politics in football. He's a pure football man.
Yeah.
Has all this white noise put him off, or is he just reaching the end of the tether?
I think, you know what, to be honest with you, he's reached the end of his tether. You know, he's had a long run on this. Same thing every Saturday. And the thing is, the work that goes into that Jeff does. I know Jeff very well. And he writes everything. So everything that you see goes through Jeff, all the facts and figures. It's all in there because he sits and writes them all out on a Thursday. He goes to a service station on a Thursday, sits and writes the whole thing out, all longhand, takes a long time, and it takes a lot of doing. So it's all effortless. But there's a lot of effort that goes into it.
There's a job going, Coity.
Well, yes, I know.
He's busy enough.
Yeah,
I am busy enough, but if there's effort involved, you know.
Thanks, Coity.
Fair enough. Thank you, Coity. That was superb. OK, well, still to come on today's show, we'll discuss why getting older doesn't mean giving up work. And we'll find out what Chris Akabusi and Anna Mikalova think in our newspaper review. And that's next.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Good morning, welcome back. The time is 8:41 and joining us to go through the papers in some detail this morning is Olympian Chris Akabusi and Deputy Political Editor at the Mail on Sunday, Anna Mikalova. Good morning to you both. Really good to see you. Chris, this has got us talking this morning, hasn't it? This is an op-ed in the FT. What we get wrong about ageing and work.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is my demographic, and as much as that the elder worker,
United Kingdom, the demographic bubble is reversed. It's like an air balloon, and there's more of us now aged at the top and very few of us younger ones at the bottom. And so the idea is, you know, are we of any material benefit to society at that age? And I'm 64, so this is my demographic. Martin Amis said during COVID that he found it harder for him to, Martin Amis, the journalist, found it harder to finish off some of his wonderful work. However, the piece is saying that although once you get to your 70s, there may be a drop-off in cognitive impairment, certainly up into your 70s, you're more than capable of making up with any loss in mental clarity with your wisdom and your experience and your knowledge of whatever it is you are doing, so that most definitely you are more than capable of matching any young person in the workplace at your area of skill and expertise. So don't give up yet. And we were discussing, you know, that certainly I've got no intention of stopping working in my ripe young age of 64. And, you know, I'd like to think that I've got at least another decade. I mean, what else would you talk about? I mean, it gives you a sense of purpose, a sense of involvement, of contribution. And I don't know what 300 days a week, 300 days a year, sorry, you know, but, you know...
How many days a week do you work
I
now?
do 50, 60 days a year work.
OK.
Yeah, and the rest of it, grandkids, children, golf. Guess where I'm going after this? Golf!
Sounds like a great work-life balance. So, my dad, Bob, he'll be watching now. He's 85 and he still loves to work sort of 3 or 4 days a week, gardening. He always says, if I stop working, I'll drop dead. But Anna, one of the points that's changed, particularly during or since lockdowns, a lot of people in their 50s have thought, well, actually, I don't need to work quite so much. A lot of people are selling their property, they're downsizing, and we do have a big problem with people in this demographic simply checking out of workforce culture.
Yeah, we've got a big problem. I mean, on the one hand, the narrative for a while has been we'll all have to work longer. The state pension age is going up and up and up. I've, you know, always had an assumption that I'll be working well into my late 70s, probably, if I can. So, but then, as you said, during COVID, something strange started happening, not just in the UK, across Europe as well. People in the over 50s have started dropping out of the job market. Partly that's health-related, so long COVID and other factors. But the honest truth is we don't know why for a lot of them. We just don't know. And it's a really massive problem for the economy, something that the government is trying to get to grips with. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor, has been trying to bring in measures, see ways of encouraging people to get back to work. But I think what you need is really a series of incentives, you know, maybe tax breaks, maybe actual handouts for people who get back into the workforce, because they're a huge untapped resource.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part and parcel of it is that through COVID, you saw you can do a lot more with less anyway. And also, like you said, people saved a little bit of money, decided, sold the house, downsized, went into the countryside. Actually, it's a lovely way of life, and you haven't got the stress of having to deliver, you know, budgets and targets, etc., etc. And then you wonder about the black economy, where the people have taken their skill sets and get paid twice as much for doing you know, less hours. So I think there might be a lot of contentions that are making people step back and actually have the good life.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people are making more informed choice about what they want to do with their time and what is actually important. Is it work or is it spending time with family as you do? What's the next story, Els?
Anna, let's have a look at The Sun, the front page. And this is the Schofield backlash. So we're stepping away from the affair on this front page, and this is more to do with concerns now about advertisers pulling out.
Yeah, so The Sun is reporting talk that advertisers are to the tune of over £2 million worth of advertising has already been lost for ITV off the back of this whole story. The headline is, "We've had it with This Morning."
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, it shows that the repercussions are greater than just, you know, one big celebrity steps down. I mean, the financial model of the whole show and even the programme could be affected unless they somehow tackle this and move forward quickly. But the thing that doesn't seem to be a very good way of handling it, which the paper's reporting today, is they've just sort of scrubbed his existence off from. So there are no more photos of Philip Schofield. There are no more. It's like there's been no trace of his career, and apparently that's come from the top boss. So that to me does not sound like a way of tackling the issue. That's burying your head in the sand, and that's not going to fly.
Yeah.
How do you think they should be dealing with things the next 24 to 48 hours? Do you think that they need to address it, or do you think they're best just put Alison and Dermot up front today and just give that warm, family-friendly feel?
I think they need to address it, particularly because it's now so much bigger than Philip Schofield, with the story moving on to toxic culture full stop at the whole channel. So they need to address it quickly. They need to reassure the many, many people who work there who have absolutely nothing to do with any of this and need to show that their jobs are safe.
Yeah, Chris, moving on to the same story on the Mirror, they've got to take Holly, insisting that she'll be staying. But will it be her decision, I wonder, in the end, if more revelations come out?
That's a great question. Look, so you're right. So she says she will do all she can. She wants to stay. The bosses say they've got no plans of changing her. But the question I had for myself was, if I was Holly, would I want to stay on morning TV? Would I want to, you know, if I've made my brand as this dynamic couple and et cetera, would I not think, OK, let me step back a little bit, take a bit of garden leave? If ITV love me this... Golf, certainly. But then come back out in 2024 with a brand new ITV show that actually showcases my skill sets. I'm not the wingman to Mr. Schofield, but actually... This is me, this is the way I do my stuff, bring her virtuosity and vivacity to life. And actually, what makes her tick? Come out and be your own person and launch Holly Willoughby 4.0. Boom!
Sounds to me like, Chris, talk about not giving her a word. You're basically pitching to be her agent.
Yeah.
On live television.
She is, though, to be fair to Chris, though, she is a really successful businesswoman. Do you know she has books and healthcare? She's done... she's a children's author. I mean, she could do lots of things outside of morning telly.
Yeah.
Will be very, very interesting.
Step out on morning TV. She'll definitely have...
She doesn't need to be boxed off.
Exactly. I would take this opportunity...
Holly, if you're listening...
Yeah, I would take this opportunity to step back, rethink and relaunch myself in a completely different area within TV. She's obviously telegenic. ITV love her and like her. She's got her faithful people who follow her. Come out and do something different.
Another PR disaster averted. Chris Akabusi, I think you've nailed it. OK, let's move on to, finally, Anna, a quick one from you. Boris Johnson is resisting pressure
Speaking of people trying to relaunch their brand and not quite managing it.
Neat segue, over to you.
Boris Johnson is yet in another scandal this week where the police has been handed over his diaries from Number 10, alleging that he hosted guests in Chequers when he wasn't meant to, and the government is now pressuring him to publish himself, his full diaries, to sort of show that there was nothing untoward, as he claims. And he's refusing. He's saying, on the grounds of national security, he's not going to. Now, this is his diaries, as in, you know, his appointments. I think the more juicy bit is the fact that out of all of this has emerged that Boris Johnson wrote, in his rather brief time at Number 10, 24 full notebooks of his accounts. So, you know, his impressions of every day, and obviously with a view to getting a very big, juicy publishing story of a publishing book deal of Boris Johnson's diaries of Number 10. So I think that partly might, yes, the national security grounds is what we've been told, but I think potentially just keeping it sweet for the book deal is the
and
other reason.
He's probably got squeaky bum time because everything seems to get leaked. Everything gets leaked by a civil servant, so this could be, you know, incendiary stuff that he wants to keep not only secret for himself, but as you say, get a juicy book deal out of it.
Absolutely, spot on, Anna. I think you're spot on there. I think that's there's a commercial imperative. It's never far from Mr. Johnson's mind.
Yeah, superb. OK, Chris Akabusi, Anna Michalova, thank you very much for your input today. It's been fabulous. Cheers.
Thank you.
Great bank holiday.
Now the time is 8:50. Let's bring you up to date with today's top stories.
And police officers from the National Crime Agency will help crack down on people smugglers operating in North Africa. According to the Times newspaper, it comes as the Italian government warns that up to 400,000 migrants could travel to Europe via Italy this summer.
A man charged with the murder of a 17-year-old boy in Sheffield will appear in court today. 29-year-old Peshwara Ghafoor from the city fatally stabbed Mohammed Iqbal in the Crooks area on Thursday. He later died in hospital. A 33-year-old man was also arrested on suspicion of assisting an offender.
And those paying for car insurance monthly could be paying an extra £300 compared to those paying annually. Consumer group Which says that while not every pay-monthly customer is paying more, the more severe price increases could be falling on drivers least able to afford them.
Now, if you're visiting Whitby in North Yorkshire this bank holiday weekend, you're going to be able to eat your food without the risk of it being pinched.
I absolutely love this report. Been looking forward to it all morning. And that's because one fish and chip shop has employed a man to dress as an eagle to scare off scavenging seagulls. Anna Riley has this magnificent story.
Meet Eagle Man. He works at Mr. Chips in Whitby and spends his day swooping down on and squawking at seagulls. And it's all to ensure that customers can enjoy their meals without the risk of being pestered by seagulls, who are notorious for stealing food along the seafront.
I'm the Eagle Man. I'm scaring the seagulls away, and Whitby is a bad place for the seagulls, taking everyone's food. And yeah, people are spending a lot of money on the food and it's getting taken away by the seagulls. I'm in this suit to run around, scare the seagulls and show them off.
John has taken on the role as Eagle Man from the former seagull scarer, who's now spreading his wings and moving on to another job.
I've always liked eagles, especially big ones. I like big birds. Trying to teach my mate JP here how to get into the use your voice. You've got to use your voice with it and throat.
Give us a little.
The idea of setting on an employee to dress as a bird of prey to shoo away the seagulls was down to Alex Boyd, the owner of Mr. Chips.
People are coming and they're buying like a meal for maybe 30 quid and they're getting literally no further past where I am now and they're just coming down and just smashing them out of the hands or coming over the top. They're just awful, yeah. We had to do something about it. Like, people love it. There's been people coming from all over the country to come and see Corey the Eagle Man, you know, and yeah, I'm proud of it, yeah.
I think you're doing a good job there.
Thank you.
Have you flown far?
And Eagle Man has become something of a celebrity, with both locals and visitors to Whitby who appreciate his work.
I think it's a great idea. Let people eat their chips in peace and not be harassed by the seagulls. Yeah, so he's doing a good job.
It's keeping us entertained. As well, the seagulls aren't bothering us at all. If you've anything to eat or anything like that, you're not pestered with them.
If it stops seagulls getting people while they're eating the fish and chips, then it's got to be a good thing.
I like his scary colours on his wings.
It's a good thing. I hope he's getting well paid.
If he scares the seagulls off from people getting fish and chips and ice cream stolen, just like I've had in the last 5 minutes, I think it's an excellent idea. Shame there isn't more of him.
Well, I've got an eagle eye on my chips thanks to the Eagle, Mr. Eagle, scaring seagulls here in Whitby. Oi, get your own. Anna Riley for GB News.
I just don't think you've find a better story than that all year.
It's just brilliant, isn't it? Brilliant.
British, eccentric, marvellous. Anyway, stay with us. We'll have the latest on the future of this morning as one of the show's former stars speaks out against the show.
But first, Jonathan Vaughtry has your bank holiday forecast.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your bank holiday forecast for GB News by the Met Office. It's not often that we get to say there's a bank holiday where we'll have a lot of fine weather, but make the most of it because high pressure is sticking with us throughout the day, keeping things dry for many of us, and there'll be a lot of warm sunshine to be had. There is, though, a bit of a squeeze in the ice bars across the very far south, so it is going to be breezier across coastal areas of England, so feeling cooler as that drags in some air from the North Sea. But elsewhere, there'll be a lot of sunshine to be had and really quite glorious if you are stepping outside. Temperatures in the western areas climbing to highs of around 20 degrees Celsius. Even parts of the central belt should climb towards those high figures. But as we said, eastern areas of England probably feeling that bit cooler where you are exposed to the breeze. Cloudy across the far north of Scotland, and it will bring the odd spots of drizzle throughout the day and overnight as well. And actually that cloud is going to slowly circulate its way down in that breeze and start pushing into eastern coastal areas of England as we head into the early hours of Tuesday morning, potentially turning quite murky here. But elsewhere we'll hold on to clear spells overnight, the odd mist patch possible underneath those clear skies as well. Temperatures falling off into low single figures for towns and cities, but a patchy frost is possible in some rural areas. Where you've had the clear spells overnight, though, it does mean you'll start off once again on Tuesday with a lot of sunshine, and you'll probably hold on to it for much of the day as well. It's going to be those eastern coastal areas, though, that actually hold on to the cloud, and it could be quite stubborn to clear its way off throughout the day. So feeling again quite cool underneath that cloud, but where you do have the sunshine, temperatures climbing into the low 20s and should be another pleasant day if you are still heading outside. High pressure is staying with us throughout the week, so we'll get a fairly repeat situation where eastern areas will stay often rather cloudy and cool, but temperatures higher over in the west. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A former This Morning star speaks out about life behind the lens as TV executives battle to save the show.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on this Bank Holiday Monday, the 29th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ellie Costello and myself, Martin Daubney.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. And Dr. Ranj Singh has hit out at what he calls the toxic culture at This Morning, as the controversy around its main anchor, Philip Schofield, continues.
And supermarkets warned the Prime Minister that limiting prices on basic food items won't bring down grocery bills. Rishi Sunak is currently in talks to cap costs on staple goods, but government sources stress any scheme will be purely voluntary.
British police officers will be tasked with breaking up people smuggling gangs in North Africa. It's amid warnings that 400,000 migrants could enter Europe through Italy this summer.
And the Met Police will stop attending mental health calls in an attempt to free up resources. From September, officers will only attend incidents related to mental health if there is an immediate threat to life.
Well, do continue to get in touch with us via Twitter, GB News, or email gbviews@gbnews.com. It's a new email address. Lots of you getting in touch this morning. David says he's enjoying the long weekend celebrating his 80th birthday with his family on the Suffolk coast. Happy birthday, David.
Yeah.
He says, wonderful weather, food fresh from the sea, comfortable accommodation, no airport or ferry delays, and just a couple of hours from home. Well, it sounds like bliss.
Yeah, and a lot of people are getting very excited and a bit cross about this food prices thing. Is it right for the government to step in to tell supermarkets to charge us less? Gail in Stockport says supermarkets are not paying farmers enough and charging retailers too much. The profits they are making should be targeted. A lot of people are feeling that we're being ripped off by supermarkets, the greedflation, and we should do more to support farmers.
Yeah, Ollie in Lincolnshire says how ridiculous to put a price cap on essentials. This is third world tactics. And Christina, thank you, Christina, because we were asking for the farmer's perspective a little bit earlier on. She says, my husband is a dairy farmer in North Dorset, and for the past 3 months only, we've been paid 45 pence per litre. Now it's been reduced to 38 pence per litre, 4p below the cost of production. So they're actually producing it now at a loss.
Yep.
Currently, we're in an unsustainable position where we have to cut costs on our farm. Well, that's what it could lead to farmers actually not being able to run their farms anymore.
Yeah, we should do more to support farmers. Don't squeeze them, support them. That's what we think.
Yeah, keep your views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com. To our top story now, and former This Morning star Dr. Ranj Singh has criticised the toxic culture on the show in a further blow to ITV.
Yeah, Dr. Singh said he had no knowledge of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger member of staff, but claimed that issues with the show go far beyond the presenter's own behaviour.
Well, in response to the statement, an ITV spokesperson said the channel was fully committed to providing every opportunity for everyone who works with them to raise any concern or comments that they may have.
So, after almost 35 years on air, can the show still go on? Well, we've been asking the public what they think.
It'd be a shame if the show was axed because of the actions of one individual. I think that they probably need to rethink the structure and the culture of the work environment there, but ultimately I think the show should go on.
Did something that was pretty, questionable. And if it was him having an affair with a girl that age, it would have been a lot more of an uproar, I think.
We don't know both sides really, so I don't like to jump to conclusions, but if it's true, it is quite bad. But I don't know, I can see people are saying that Holly's a little bit uncomfortable in some situations, but I don't know, I guess we've got to see what happens.
Well, joining us now is the Showbiz journalist Ellie Phillips. And Ellie, the ITV crisis, it's just deepening, isn't it?
It is. It's rolling on, and in news that's just breaking now, Daily Mail Group reporting that the young man in question who Philip had the affair with has allegedly told them, or through sources has told them that he was never quizzed by ITV bosses
Wow.
about their relationship, which comes off the back of ITV issuing that statement saying that they did a full investigation in early 2020, asked both of the men, who they say categorically denied having any relationship of any sort, asked other people, didn't find any evidence of anything. And yet, according to reports now, this young man saying that he was never asked about it at all,
Wow.
which raises other questions. And another thing that's happened is that Daily Mail Group are saying that they have evidence that the young man was, 15 or younger when they first met, which is really worrying.
If those revelations are true, and of course the caveat is if they are true,
allegedly. Mm-hmm.
if the duty of care was not there to speak to a younger member of staff, because of the huge public profile of Mr. Schofield, if those questions weren't asked, this is a terrible, terrible blow.
Yeah, it's really bad because it speaks to kind of issues not being dealt with properly, investigations not being done thoroughly. And I think the thing is, people are asking how did he get away with this? How did it go on for so long? But you have to remember that the young man in question was his PA and his runner. So there will have been a lot of time when they were on their own together with no one asking questions because it was normal for that to take place. If you've got your PA, they need to get things for you. They're your sidekick, essentially. And I think that's one of the things that we have to be aware of is that someone can lead a double life. And it seemed to be that Philip Schofield was leading this double life and hiding it in plain sight, which is really worrying when it comes to the duty of care, because when you hire someone at 18 years old to bring into a company and you're pairing them up with someone who is so senior, I think you need to be so aware that rules are in place, that procedures are in place, that nothing untoward can go on.
Should we talk specifically about Dr. Ranj Singh's allegations that he's made? He's talked about a toxic culture of bullying and discrimination, and this comes off the back of similar sorts of comments from our very own Eamonn Holmes, who says that he has tried to flag behaviour to bosses and was ignored.
Yeah, and as well as that, Dan Button, one of our own, he said that he had the same thing, that he flagged this issue specifically about Philip Schofield, and that he had 8 other household names who raised the issue as well. And that just speaks to, I mean, the fact that I knew, and I've known for years, and I've only recently been working with ITV, it kind of is like, well, if we all knew, how didn't they know? And if there was this culture where nothing was being done about it, then that obviously has to change.
Yeah, I mean, I worked for the show for 6 years as a contributor at the same time as Dr. Ranj. He was a good pal of mine. And you're absolutely right. It was absolutely commonplace that people talked about what was going on. But you told us earlier that actually this story only came to be public because Schofield was caught.
So allegedly what happened was, the reason that it all seems to have come public right now is because there was something going on behind the scenes with Holly, which we're yet to know, because in his statement when he admitted to the affair, Phil stated that the reason he left this morning was nothing to do with this. So we're still waiting to find out specifically what that was, which is not going to help anyone in this situation or Holly, because that's still rumbling on in the background. But that when he, I just think it's such a mess for all of them to be dealing with at the moment. It's complicated, it's just so damaging for the brand in general, and I think to come out the other side, so much is going to have to be done. You've got these constant reports coming out where, allegedly this young man confessed his love to Philip. A month later, that's when he came out as gay on television, and now it's claimed that Philip hired lawyers for this young man because these rumours started swirling again in the past few weeks before he admitted to it. And allegedly, the young man in question, Philip assumed that he would keep stum about it still, but he apparently, reportedly, said all to his lawyers, and that's what's made it all now come out, because the lawyers then knew for the first time.
OK. Ellie, really fascinating to have your insight, and really good to have you with us in the studio. Thank you so much.
And if this is true, this really is like moving things on at a very, very quick pace. Ellie, that was amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
OK, well, next story now. British police officers will be tasked with cracking down on people smuggling gangs in North Africa amid concerns that 400,000 people will attempt to enter Europe through Italy this summer.
Well, the warning comes ahead of a trip to the region by Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, where he will emphasise the importance of stopping people smuggling.
And joining us now is the political editor at the Daily Express, Sam Lister. Top of the morning to you, Sam. So this sounds like a very good initiative, and at least on paper, stopping the immigration problem at its source, clamping down on people coming over the Med. It was 167,000 last year, rumoured to be as many as 400,000 this year. The big question is, of course, will anything actually change, or is it just yet more tough talk?
Well, this is the thing. I think actually tackling the kind of migration crisis on Italy's border is key to solving our own issues in the UK. And over the last decade, around 2.4 million migrants have entered the EU illegally. And since 2016, most of those have come in through Italy. And the reason that changed in 2016 is because the EU did a deal with Turkey. They gave them a big amount of money to kind of police the border there. That then pushed everybody round to Italy. And Italy's basically struggling on its own to deal with this crisis. You talk about the figures there. I think the people in Italy actually fear it might even be higher than that. Now, they elected Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister. She's a very right-wing Prime Minister over in Italy. That caused quite a lot of horror across the rest of the EU, as you can imagine. But her point is actually the whole of the EU needs to get on board and help police these borders, because Italy cannot do it on its own. And actually, you know, for us as the UK, obviously Robert Jenrick is now looking at this issue. And I think it's probably a very good thing that we outside the EU now also are involved, because, as I say, it does contribute to our own small boats crisis.
So, I mean, you just touched upon there, Sam, our own British police from the National Crime Agency are now going to work with Tunisians and Algerians to prevent hundreds of thousands of migrants leaving North Africa this summer. But, I mean, we had Mike Neville on earlier, retired Detective Chief Inspector, and we're talking about crime going unsolved. I mean, will we actually get action on this when we can't even solve our own crime in our own country? I mean, we can't tackle gangs here in Britain, let alone in North Africa.
Yes, that is true. And obviously our police are very overstretched. We know this. There are so many demands. We've seen another story today about how the police will stop dealing with essentially social care calls, people who have gone missing, having mental health crises, because that's putting such pressure on their resources. But I think, you know, as a nation, we have to look about the bigger picture here. And the bigger picture is, if migrants manage to breach Italy's borders, it's only a hop, skip and a jump for them then to breach our own. And so British involvement is a big thing in this, but I think it does need to be a wider EU issue. It's not, I mean, we as Britain cannot just help Italy on our own. We need the EU to be involved in this. And I think there's quite a lot of resistance in Brussels to helping Italy tackle this problem, because obviously the issue of migration is incredibly politically divisive across the bloc, and I think people are reluctant to particularly work with Meloni on this issue.
Well, Sam, makes you wonder. The EU has spent 61.5 million quid on this problem since 2019. That hasn't made a blind bit of difference. We've given 576 million quid to France. Doesn't seem to have done much. And we've been dealing with countries like Libya, who are the 9th most corrupt nation on the planet. So do you think we'll have any chance of throwing a load of money their way and getting a resolution? Or is this basically just the Tories puffing up their chests and trying to look tough for the telly?
Well, I mean, I suppose, you know, if you don't try, you don't win, do you? So I guess, you know, we have to kind of find a way of dealing with this. I think the issue with the amount of money we've spent in France has obviously been a difficult one, because that we haven't seen great returns on that cash. But we know Rishi Sunak did a kind of enhanced deal with Macron a few months ago, and that's, I mean, it's a significantly bigger investment in that, and hopefully there will be rewards to see from that, but only time will tell on that. But I guess, you know, this is a huge problem. It is a problem across the whole of Europe. We have migrants trying to breach the borders from across North Africa in huge volumes, and people are struggling to find ways to deal with that. And I guess, you know, you try one option, and then if that doesn't work, you try something else.
OK, Sam Lister, political editor of the Daily Express. I certainly hope people out there will be on your side. We hope things will change this time. Forgive me if I have a slightly cynical tone in my voice. Thanks for your input today.
Now, in just over 15 minutes' time, To The Point is coming up here at GB News, and Dawn Neeson and Emily Carver are here to tell us all about it and what's coming up on today's show. We've got Girl Power this morning.
Happy Bank Holiday.
Yeah, happy Bank Holiday.
And you, cynical Martin, perish the very thought of that. We have actually got a really fun show, haven't we?
We do.
We have. We have got food. Bank holiday, barbecues and price caps, obviously.
Yes, well, the supermarkets cap basics, I'm not so sure.
Well, exactly. We've also got a little exclusive about Gordon the Gopher.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and the bloke who used to work with him, Schofield, I think his name was, wasn't it? Yeah, a bit about him as well. And also, we are doing... What else are we doing, Emily?
Well, we have our fantastic paper reviewers, of course.
Yes, of course.
We'll keep that a secret
I was
for
trying
now.
not to mention that. We have, obviously, Mike Parry, who is reviewing the paper, and Busher Shake. But Mike is a big Everton fan. And
he'll be
you've done your
delighted.
sport, absolutely.
Yeah.
We don't have a sports section on our show. I'm trying.
No, we don't, actually. We
but
don't. Mike give us the
Mike Parry
detail.
might be a little bit hungover. So it's Gordon, the Gopher, Mike Parry and food. I mean, what's not to like, basically?
What's not to like? A packed show.
Sounds like a veritable smorgasbord. And also a little bit of cynicism there about supermarket price gaps. It's good to be, I think, healthily cynical in life.
A little bit of cynicism,
Voluntary,
yes.
isn't it? It's like,
With a smile.
Dear Sainsbury's, would you like to make less profit? Oh, yeah, we'll volunteer for that, won't we? I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Dawn, Emily, that's great. And make sure you stay tuned for To The Point straight after us.
Now, coming up, as temperatures peak across the country, we'll get tips on how you can get beach body ready if you're over 50. That's next. This is Breakfast on GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it. Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
And welcome back. It's 9:21. Now, with the Met Office issuing heatwave warnings and the temperature already soaring, many of us are thinking about how to tone up for the summer.
Well, one expert on this is Cecilia Harris, who developed a passion for fitness in her 50s and is now in the best shape of her life. And she joins us now to tell us more. And Cecilia, you do look absolutely fantastic at 52, if you don't mind me saying. You look wonderful. So tell us, where did the passion come from? Because it's a fabulous message, isn't it, that you can enjoy exercise at any age?
100%. I mean, my background started, unfortunately, in a dark place after postnatal depression. And I found that movement, exercise, was a gateway to find maybe a little bit more of happiness and certainly getting away from that stressful moment. And since then, I have been an advocate to push and make women fall in love with exercise, because for me, it is the happy pill that everyone is looking for. So from the age of 35, so I started quite late, I became a personal trainer and wanted to share this with everyone, how much exercise and how much movement can do not only, obviously, a beautiful body, but also your mental health. 100% more open to everything, more positive, more energetic. So much is beneficial when you actually have exercise in your life.
Well, Cecilia, I can also concur it's not just women this affects, and I've got my fair share of dad bod. Sorry if that's an overshare. But what I want to know is, how do you get started on the first step? The first step is the hardest on any of these journeys. How do you get over that thing about, no, I'm not the person I was, I don't look as good as I used to do? How do you get started?
It's a very difficult place to start with. But as I always say to my followers, my members, is start. One day at a time, start. So it could just be for going for walks, but instead of making them, you know, a nice slow walk, go for something a bit more power walk. You know, use heels in your walks. So walking is very much underestimated, but it's a wonderful way of getting fitter and also helping your mental health. So starting very slowly is my advice. One step at a time, one press up at a time, one squat at a time, one crunch at a time. Start. Don't stop yourself because you're scared of, first of all, maybe not looking as good as you should because you're new at this. And that is the worry that happens to all of us. We don't start because we don't want to look bad in front of others. Let's forget about others. No one is judging you. No one is looking at you. Everyone has too much on their mind and their lives to worry about what you look like or what you're doing. Just start.
Fantastic tip, though. We've got 30 seconds with you. So your top tips for people who are looking to get toned for the summer. They haven't really got long, four to 6 weeks, I'd say, before the peak of the summer. What's your top tip to them?
Start my new plan on the app RWL.
A blatant plug.
I have a wonderful plan called Power Up that has transformed many women and men, shall I say, too. So, no, first thing first, look at your nutrition. If you're looking to shed a little bit of body fat or body weight, nutrition is 80% of that formula. So, especially for us ladies, I'm 52, as you just said, you really need to pay more attention to your nutrition. Sugar is a little bit something that we need to look after. But unfortunately, as the beautiful sunny weather is coming out, guess what's going to happen to all of us? We are going to have a beverage or two, right? or maybe 10. But unfortunately, that is not going to help your waistline at all, or the bikini body. So you're going to have to watch that for sure. Just make sure that you have a beautiful
Cecilia,
okay.
I'm afraid you're speaking total passion, but we have to put a cork on this interview. Thank you very much for speaking out. It's amazing. Thank you very much, Celia.
Celia, you're fabulous. Thank you very much. Well, that's it from us this morning. We'll back from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning.
That's right. But up next, of course, is Dawn Neeson and Emily Carver, Girl Power with To The Point.
It is us back. We're always beach body ready, I must say.
We're not wearing bikinis to do the show, though, are we? No, we have some great stuff. We have Gordon the Gopher and the bloke that used to work with him. We have food price caps. We have bank holiday, wonderful barbecue news, and it's just going to be a fantastic show. But first, that's all coming up To The Point with Emily and Dawn after the news.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9:30 on Monday the 29th of May and happy bank holiday to you all. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Dawn Neeson, and the lovely Emily Carver.
Thank you. So, doctor's diagnosis, Ranj Singh slams the culture
at This Morning, saying he complained and then got the boot. But ITV bosses say the show must go on.
Right, OK. And interestingly, Philip Schofield has just put a message up on his Instagram, but more of that coming up.
Yes.
Also, food price caps reportedly on the table at Downing Street, but retailers insist it won't solve the problem. But what do you think? Get in touch at gbviews@gbnews.com.
And we're in the Lake District as campaigners warn sewage is threatening one of the most beautiful areas of the country. All of that to come on To The Point. And as always, please do let us know all your thoughts throughout the show on all of our talking points of the day. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, let's get the morning news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good morning to you. It is 9:31. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Police from the National Crime Agency will help tackle people